I'm sorry to start the show on a somber note today. Many of you are aware of the recent California lawsuit pertaining to injustices perpetrated in our industry. I want to take this time to declare that we stand firmly with combating discrimination and harassment. This is not our time or place to add our own voice to the fight. Instead, the voices that are most important and the ones we should be listening to are the ones that have been most impacted. Stand with women, believe women, and support the women whose voices right now are the ones who need to be heard the most. With that said, let's get into episode 185 of Tactical Crouch, brought to you by Battle Crab, Refined Bean, Bronzebot Buhal, Chare, Chris R34444, Fabled Steven, Hunter Tane, Casher67, Lolshin, Rex Zane, Sir Girthalot, Wilma D, Yiska's All Percentage Shower Gel, and your misery. Gentlemen, busy week as we had our last episode talking about postmortem for the Summer Showdown. We are now imminently approaching the Countdown Cup, which is starting this weekend. We have recently received news of playoffs information as well, so there's a lot underway for the rest of the season.
Yeah, we're finally kind of coming down the stretch. It's an exciting time. A lot of spots to secure, a lot of races that are finally coming to a head. The hero pools. Did they change? Did they not change? It's a kind of a refreshing, not exit. Exit seems a little sad or mean, but we're finally coming to a climax. We can kind of see it on the horizon, and it's a fun time.
Yeah, I think especially because they're like, in a way, this feels like a very European finish to a season. And what I mean is, in European leagues, you're playing for something at like every part of the league table. Like you're playing against relegation, you're playing for Europe League qualification, you're playing for the championship and whatnot, right? This one feels much like this because down to the Florida Mayhem, everyone can still get into the play-ins. And then around the direct playoff qualifications, there's also a bunch of battles. And the direct competitions there, at all these tiers, are highly entertaining. We have so many great games coming up in Countdown Cup. So, yeah, no, this is something that feels very European League.
Yeah, I love it. Every single game, like you said, feels pretty important. There's a massive race for play-ins, which we'll be discussing in a hot second here as well. Even the stuff about going to LAN, I mean, that was such huge news that we had this week. So we're really reaching, like Joe said, a bit of a climax here in the tournament where Countdown Cup feels super important. And straight after that as well, we just go into playoffs. It's like we get to the climax and it gets extended by a fair amount because it only gets better from Countdown Cup. We don't go into another sort of qualification stage. We go from a hardcore tournament right into, you would argue, an even better. In fact, it is just going to be a better tournament. It's play-ins directly into LAN playoffs, which is the first, and things only get better from there. So, I mean, playoffs information being released, the first and somewhat, you could argue, most important, most significant was the fact that, yeah, it's LAN playoffs, which I don't think we've ever had if you exclude the stuff that happened at Blizzard Arena, which is when it was all one region on LAN anyway. If we take that out of the equation and look at it from the COVID period from 2020, this is our, we finally get like a proper LAN setting, not just for the grand finals, but also for playoffs.
Yeah, it has been a long time coming to finally see, an iota of what the original vision for this league was finally kind of come to fruition. And it does kind of feel like we're finally seeing those fruits where you have these two very separate regions. One or the other is finally coming over, playing on LAN in front of hopefully a live audience, all things considered, knock on wood. And with how things are going thus far, it should be entirely like fireworks. It should be just an absolute barn burner. Like the styles that we've seen thus far kind of consistently clashing, whether it be Dallas kind of imposing their will, whether it be Dallas kind of shifting and asking Shanghai, can you adapt on the fly, them answering in kind, and then having them kind of, run the course in summer. It really isn't I'm going to feel like a broken record kind of overstating this, but it is super exciting. It does feel like we're getting to the head of a really fun story. We're finally reaching the peak.
Yeah. I can't lie. It feel like, yes, you play an entire season and I feel like a lot of teams are where we almost expected them. I think like my preseason power rankings don't look too terrible, except like Paris is better or whatever. But it feels bad that a lot will be decided in this hero pool, which arguably is the hero pool this year that will favor some teams the most over others,
Sure.
especially in NA, because I don't know, like it should feel pretty bad being Florida Mayhem at the moment. Like,
I mean, there's other reasons why I should feel pretty bad being the Florida Mayhem, but
And they put themselves in that situation from previous tournaments. And let's not blame this current hero pool. They've had two open hero pools, one of which they did quite well in, and they had the June Zhao's hero pool, which I don't know. I don't know if they that just wasn't it for them. But you really to get to this point, your viability for how good your chances are of making play-ins. Let's just start with play-ins. Came down to the fact of how you played previously. But to even get there, I mean, just for the audience, if you haven't caught up with the news of how the format actually works, there's going to be direct qualification into the playoffs itself. So the top 3 teams from North America from the Western Division, and the top 2 teams from the Eastern Division in APAC, those 5 teams are automatically qualified and seeded into the playoffs, which will take place in Arlington, Texas on LAN. The other 3 positions in playoffs, 2 from North America and 1 from APAC, will be decided via play-ins. And play-ins come from the seeds 3, 4, and 5 in the APAC region, and 4, 5, 6, and 7 in the North American region. Is it 7? Is it? And 8? 7, 8, and I think 9, 10, 11, 12. So 8 and 9 are in there as well. So 10, 11, 12, and not. So there's 4 to 9. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. There's 6 teams. Yeah, I just had to make sure I got that right, because in my head I was thinking 4 teams doesn't sound right. It's 6 teams from NA that will be playing in the play-ins, of which the top 2 will make it to the playoffs. So, any initial thoughts on that?
It kind of worked out that NA's, I mean, obviously they have the wider pool to pick from of teams, but it also feels like the most contentious. I think this isn't going, I don't want this to bleed into like, oh, which region is better, because I do think that like Asia has like really, really strong teams at the top, but their mid-pack teams are just kind of like, either I can't.
Everyone's mid-pack team's kind of weak. Aren't NA's mid-pack teams kind of weak?
No, I don't think so. I think the difference is that NA feels less stratified than Asia, where it's like there are some clear top teams in Asia, and then everybody else kind of like waffles in the middle. But that could just be because there's not enough like space to kind of separate, or there's not enough bad teams to kind of bully to kind of really showcase that you don't deserve to be at the bottom. Which is no blame to any of the Eastern teams, but yeah, I'm kind of okay with the way it worked, that there's more of a chance to see a team like the Gladiators, a team like a Shock, a Paris maybe making a dark horse run, showcasing that in play-ins.
I apologize for sending you off track, because you're like, oh, I don't want to turn this into like a region versus region who's better discussion. And I'm like, but hang on a second, who is?
Listen, I got a bone to pick with you.
Wait a minute, Joe. I'm not going to let you get off that easy. We are going to get contentious on the show, if nothing else, and especially coming from me. So okay, I mean that's fair enough. I actually, to me, I felt like the Eastern region was quite an aggressive cutoff, when you consider that 3 teams from each region do not make the plans at all, but the Eastern region has 4 less teams. Just 33% less teams, really. So that's actually 50% less teams, depending on which direction you look at it from. But the point being is, it's the same number of cutoff teams from the bottom, despite being a smaller region. And I believe the answer to that question is that the number 3 seed from Asia, from APAC, ends up having more value because they get a bye. So because there's only 3 teams in the APAC region going to play-ins, 4 and 5 play with each other, and the winner of that plays number 3. I would actually argue that even if you, because my kind of position would have been, if it were me doing this format, I would have preferred doing 3, 4, 5, and 6 from APAC into the play-ins, and then third seed gets to pick their opponent between 5 and 6, which is a pretty big advantage in and of itself as well. And we get an extra game, and it's slightly more lenient. And the reason why I think it's more fair that it's slightly more lenient is because there's less teams, so the cutoff shouldn't be as aggressive, or it shouldn't be equal to what is an NA with more teams. And that would just, to me, provide better competition. But yeah, that's where that stands. And just another thing I threw in there as well is the fact that, yeah, there are teams picking other teams in this, so higher seed does matter in that regard. That's something I actually brought up to John Spector and the team pretty early on in the season. I was saying, like, I think there's potentially some issues here regarding how some of the playoff seeding, or not even playoffs, just tournament seedings work, going to the tournaments, where, depending on what side of the bracket you landed on, you could get very lucky or maybe unlucky. I remember in Melee that, getting Shock or Dallas on your side was pretty unlucky. I remember the team that most honestly got robbed in seeding was Philadelphia, because they went up against Shanghai, who came in 4th seed, and Shanghai were not at all a 4th seed team, considering they came 2nd in that tournament and then dominated the rest of the tournaments. Shanghai have never been a 4th seed team in APAC, and Philadelphia got mega robbed of going to Melee, because as the first seed team, Fusion that is, having a perfect run in Melee up until that point, 4-0, then having to face the best competition. They are the best, they're the number 1 seed. They should have the easier game, not the harder game, but they got given the harder game, and that would have been fixed if Philadelphia in first seed got to choose their opponent. So I'm glad that at least for playoffs now, that's finally being implemented.
Yeah, hopefully that can be implemented, moving forward. It does add a lot of stakes. It gives, it's an excuse to make content. Teams can come out and, either make their own, social posts or what have you, or you can have like little draw shows, right? Like they've done in the past.
100%.
It's super exciting. And you can do a lot with it. So yeah, hopefully we can get that, because like you said, teams like Philly, that maybe peaked early, didn't get a chance to go. But if given the opportunity, they could have drawn somebody else.
It's also like, I'll say it, Solar, another team that probably could have gone at various points. They've done super well every single stage. They've gone 3-1 every single qualifier, which is mad consistent. Like, they have some of the highest consistency for regular season in the league, which is so counter to their narrative from the previous year, right? So that's wildly good for Sol, but they always crumble in the actual knockout game, because unfortunately they've been knocked out by Shanghai twice now. So it's a bit unfortunate, but unlucky for a team that goes 3-1 to end up in that situation like twice in a row. They got knocked out by Chengdu and Melee, and that's fair enough. Chengdu really played well. Basically, what I'm saying is, like, up until this point, I felt like seeding has often not been reflective of who is actually the best and who's not. And often, I'm not going to use the word RNG because I don't think it's random, but I think there's almost incentive for some teams, especially in NA, to be like, well, I could probably dodge Dallas and I'd dodge X or Y team if I become this seed instead of that seed. And therefore, it might be advantageous for me to drop a certain map or this or that. And that was actually exemplified. Not that this actually happened, but the possibility of which could have happened in the Gladiators versus Washington game in some showdown qualifiers, I believe, because they were very late. And they could have, if you wanted to. I'm not saying a team should, but I'm just saying the option was there. If you wanted to, you could either lock the Shock out or guarantee that they make it in. That's a lot of power. And I don't think there should ever be any incentive for a team ever not to try their hardest and to win. There should never be an incentive to be a lower seed rather than a higher seed, so you can dodge an opponent. And it's not that I think teams would, or that they should, or that they, that it's the correct thing to do. I just think if that option's available at all, that's a failure of the format. That option should just never be available.
Yeah.
Refine it away.
I also think, like, you can do one of two things. Either your qualification and seeding process, so how people acquire their seed, is thorough because you have a lot of games. And if you can't do that, you gotta have a double elimination bracket in order to make up for your seeding issues, right? Yes, you can also have like pick your opponent and then the higher seed gets to choose. Sometimes the higher seed doesn't deserve the highest seed though. Sometimes the highest seed beat 3 of the bottom tier teams and maybe one middle of the pack team, and they get highest seed and therefore the easiest bracket. So, like in my mind, like if we really only have 4 qualifying matches, then we probably need double elim in order to weed out like these uncertainties. Because unfortunately, what very often then would happen, and arguably we got lucky with Chengdu, for instance, this time. But very often, like one of the teams just isn't competitive. You know, New York wasn't competitive.
Yeah.
Florida wasn't really competitive going to Hawaii, right? So that just takes away. Yeah.
I think that to bring the point in New York, because you brought it up, I think that was Hangzhou's stage to get into a tournament.
Sure.
Yeah.
But this is where I'm not going to blame the format. Like that would be a hard excuse because they got given the surefire pathway there. In fact, Philadelphia, as much as I joked that I was, oh yeah, Philly gave New York a free pass in. The team they actually gave a free pass into was Hangzhou, except unfortunately the Hangzhou threw away that free pass into the bin because they failed to beat New York when they should have beaten New York. And you know, credit to New York for winning that game. And unfortunately, Hangzhou choked. They hard choked it as a 4-0 team. They gave themselves the best opportunity and choked it away. So that's Hangzhou's own fault. But my copium would have said that Hangzhou in that tournament in New York possibly would have been better. And we would have had less of this like second seed from APAC sucks.
Sure, but double elim would have also made it less likely for New York to make it in that way, right? Like then Spark would have gone down. Like if you beat them twice, like at that point, okay, we've proven you can't do it then, right? But like getting upset on one day, I don't know. I feel like just a lot of the time, not only our perception, but also the actual impact on your season is so heavily determined how you feel like 2 days in a row. Like one weekend can absolutely ruin your tournament cycle. Like we saw, let's say, stage like May Melee qualifier for Gladiators, where we were all like, haha, Scrimbox, and they really just like weren't as good one weekend. But that's our perception now because we have so few games. So, yeah, I mean, bottom line is we just need more games. Like it's just not enough games in order to really thoroughly prove. It's actually super impressive that Dallas and Shanghai have been able to so reliably get there without all of these fail-safes built into it, right? That just means like they're probably just better.
Yeah. I think the narrative this season as a whole has been we're getting on a good format track, but we need more samples to pull from. We need more regular season games to qualify for the qualifier, right? We need, or it would be good to have a play-in with a lower seed or a lower bracket to be able to play through, so you don't just kind of, it doesn't feel like it's RNG. Obviously, it isn't, like AVRL said, but it does feel that way where, you know, Dallas fumbles early, you know, in Melee, and they come in with the lower seed and they beat up on, you know, an 0-4 team, right? That 0-4 curse is there for a reason because it felt as though the winner was always kind of coming in from a lower seed, which really wasn't the case in form, but on paper, that's what the people were giving.
And I want to say that, sorry, Yiska, did you something else to add there?
Yeah, quickly? Like in my mind, one thing that we absolutely need is more symmetry. So what we need is, if we do have 2 compartments, they need to be like 2 divisions. They need to be equal size, or a divisible number where the amount of games is equal, but okay, this is a little complicated. What I mean is everyone should be playing the same amount of games and the same amount of the same opponents at the same time. You would need to find a number. World. Yeah, like 24.
Ideally,
well, what you're talking about is ideally both regions have the same amount of teams. You literally play a round robin where you play all the same teams.
Yeah. So
that is, if we're going to talk about fairness and competitive integrity and all that jazz, that would be like the quote unquote fairest way to do it, right?
Yeah, I think in my mind, like the best number we have is 12 NA teams, 8 Asian teams, all of them to play 24 games. Asia plays each other 3 times, like each opponent, and NA plays each other twice. because currently what we have with 14 matches, 16 matches
16.
in NA, where there's 12 teams, that means you have like such variance in how strong you're. Like, it's very different if I'm playing Dallas, Shock, Houston, and Atlanta Rain twice, or if I play London, Vancouver twice and whatnot, right? Like, this determines my season in a major way.
Yeah.
And
Now,
you cannot foresee how it will shake out. I think a lot of us expected, for instance, London to be stronger than they turned out to be. But, like, you can't do it previously. So what you got to build is a system where you're just, like, protected from all these situations where there is just symmetry. Yes, there will be stuff like, oh, you caught this team in this hero pool, and therefore your schedule was harder. Whatever. You're not going to get rid of it. But the asymmetry in our schedules will always be an issue for competitive integrity.
I will play devil's advocate. The reasoning for some of my questioning earlier is just to get the specifics about what we're talking about. And you expanded on that further by talking about 24 games, and that's this region plays each other twice, APAC plays each other 3 times, etc. The obvious thing to say first and foremost that I think everyone already knows, you guys know this already, but there's a logistical issue there, and that's why teams are the numbers that they are. In fact, there was, again, I'm just going to tell you things you already know. There was probably only going to be 7 teams in APAC at one point, like last year, but we managed to get 8 in there because LA Valiant dropped in the last second, and that's its own separate can of worms, because you'd argue that it was done in the worst way. In fact, it is just done in the worst way possible. So despite rounding out 8 teams, you gave us the 8th team is so irrelevant that they might as well not be there. So it defeats the purpose, doesn't it? There's a logistical issue with having the same number of teams, and then beyond that as well, I'm fairly certain at multiple stages, as far as the league office goes, their stance, definitely in terms of this season, has been that less games in qualification equals good, because those have been the games previously in other seasons that have been the most boring or least impactful, or the ones where you lose people's interest the easiest, because obviously 40 game season, too many. Then it went to, was it 28? And that was still considered, I know internally that was considered to be too many again. And what was last year? How many regular season games was last year? I've actually completely
21.
forgotten.
I mean, it was kind of a toss.
So 21?
Yeah.
I would argue somewhere between 20 and 24 is actually pretty correct. So I don't think you're that far off, Yiska. For me, 20 is a good number, because 20 means instead of 4 qualification games per stage, you do 5. And even just that 1 extra per stage means you have way less of this 2-2 tiebreaker. You have just slightly more accurate seedings, and you have slightly more leeway and ability for teams to maybe make a bounce back, because the way it currently works is if you have a bad weekend, you're out. If you have a bad weekend, you're 0-2, forget about it, you're done. You might squeeze in on a 2-2 tiebreaker at best, and if you do, you're in the bottom seed. So it's tough, it's rough. So I don't like the 4 games per stage right now. I'll give you guys that. I'll give everyone that. I think that everyone agrees on that part.
I think, like, I gotta give the league office some credit here, because theoretically speaking, right, 24 means 6 qualifying matches per tournament cycle. That is entirely feasible right now with our scheduling. That would mean each team plays 2 matches each week, plus the tournament. Then you have 4 weeks of sprint, a week of break. I feel like they might have felt this was too many matches and too much pressure on the players, and the feedback probably was that was not going to be a feasible thing. In my mind, like, the way how we fix this is, like, we keep the qualification to 6, and then after the tournament, we just increase the wait time by 2 weeks. It might even help with viewer fatigue. I'm not sure if the dip that we're currently experiencing each season in the mid-season is just due to, like, viewer fatigue, and maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just summer. People are going outside, like, and therefore they aren't watching as much Overwatch League. But if it is fatigue related, then more games would, of course, hurt this. And the way you circumvent that is to have longer breaks, which helps the players and the audience to sort of feel fresh about it again.
So I'm going to speak to viewer fatigue in a second. Well, right now, actually. And my take on that is, There's two ways to look at this. One, if you look at the league holistically, which is I know the way I think the league office looks at it. Obviously, it's one whole league, 20 teams in a single league playing for a championship. Cool, got it. We're on the same page. If you try and watch every single game from all 20 teams, you're going to get viewer fatigue. 100%, no doubts about it. And that's not even taking into account logistics. Like, forget about the part where you have to stay awake at an ungodly hour, depending on where you live in the world, to watch either region, because you can't watch both, probably, unless you're like Hexagrams, who wakes up at 3 a.m. Each morning to catch all the APAC games and then watch NA on the same day. But that's his job. He gets paid to do that. It's different. It's too hard to watch both regions. But why is there no? Maybe there is, but I haven't seen as much discussion or as much fingers pointed towards viewer fatigue and other esports. I always use League as the example. We're gonna go back to League of Legends. Sorry, but no one. I don't think anyone goes and watches LCK, then LEC, then LCS, then LPL, all back to back to back to back.
True.
And if you try, then obviously you'd have viewer fatigue.
Yes.
The difference there is their regions are so separated as their own region that you normally you just support one region. If you're an LCS watcher, you just watch LCS. And if you watch all the LCS games, you can watch all the LCS games, and you're probably not going to feel viewer fatigue for the average person. You might if you're not super into it, but if you're a fan of the LCS and you watch all of the LCS, I think you're probably fine, because there's enough games to keep your attention, and it's just on that edge where if maybe they introduced a couple more games, it might cross the line, but where they are is kind of perfect. And I look at it from the POV, and this is the second way you look at it, is if you actually just look at it as APAC region and just look at it as NA region, and you're an NA fan, you only watch NA, which I think most of them do anyway. You're an APAC fan, you only watch APAC, which I think most of them do anyway. Then I don't see where the view fatigue comes from. And if you did what Yiska's saying, 6 games per stage, 24 qualification games, regular season games in the entire season, and you only watched one region, you supported your region, I don't think you would get viewer fatigue. So I don't think 24 games is too much at all.
Yeah,
No,
that's fair.
I think you're bang on with the analogy to League and how the Overwatch League has separated. It does feel like 2 separate broadcasts. It does feel like 2 separate divisions is maybe too weak. But in terms of just that, each bubble, right? Like, you have the NA bubble, you have the Eastern bubble, you have that, stylistic difference, you have the broadcast difference. I think, if anything, maybe even doubling down on that, so you can differentiate to people that, like, this is almost like a different league. Like, what they do over there that's completely different from what we do over here, and then we meet every once in a while and we battle and we have these narratives, and it's sick. I think that's the way forward to combat viewer fatigue. I think that's.
So I think there should be 2 separate watch points. APAC has its own watch point. They have their production crew, their talent. Even though I don't mind if maybe talent swapping in between is okay, but depending on time zone stuff, that's still pretty rough.
Difficult.
I know from speaking to the other casters who do cover APAC as well as me, the ones based in NA, I know that the APAC games definitely they're up till 6 a.m. or later. I remember Doe ZP one weekend for one of the days, they were up until like 8 or 9 a.m. because they had all their games were 4-5 maps, something like that.
Yeah.
So they were up for ages. But that's besides the point. Like I'm not gonna speak on somebody else's behalf. I'm the kind of DGen that, like, if it were me, I wouldn't give a fuck. Like, I'll just do it at 9 a.m. Who cares? But I won't speak on anyone else's behalf on what they think about that. I'm just stating the facts of what it is. But beyond that, I agree, Joe. Double down on it. Make it 2 separate regions, like even more so than it already is. Because I think the inter-regional rivalry and fan debate has been some really entertaining stuff.
So good.
Those are the real narratives that fans buy into. You invest in these narratives because you support your region. You want to see your region do well. I'll tell you what, every single tournament, and especially LAN. Okay, get it Texas and all the teams on LAN 2 regions. You're gonna get some real fireworks there because you're getting some real opportunities. Like, how do these 2 regions play on LAN? Because now you can forget about all the Hawaii. Like, we're jet lagged and we lost a day because we lost our flight. Now it's all about, no, you're on LAN now. No more excuses. And if anything, this time the APAC teams are disadvantaged because they're traveling, and we'll see how that impacts them. But my point is the separation of the divisions and the separation of the regions creates far more exciting games and narratives. The fan interaction there, the engagement increases tremendously. So double down on it really hard, in my opinion.
I
Agreed.
also think there's a bit of a scheduling issue this year, and maybe that's just like them saying, okay, our VOD viewership is so good that we don't necessarily have to care. But if I think about the schedules, like we're running 3 weeks of qualifiers, right? At pretty normal standardized times until in the last week of qualifiers, we're starting on Thursday during a time. Then we run through Sunday. Then like time switch during that. Already my games, like if I'm a viewer of a specific team, I like within 1 or 2 hours difference, I can expect my team to play. So I can't schedule that for me. And then I gotta switch to an entirely different time zone in Hawaii if I want to catch those. And in a time zone that doesn't seem so well aligned with any part of the world. Like it's not like
Is it really?
It's
Pretty
it's
good
like
for NA and APAC.
when does
I
it
mean,
start
It's
in NA?
like evening NA. I think it was like
Yeah, it's
9,
evening NA.
which is fine.
9 p.m.
So,
Okay,
really,
that's
like,
actually okay, that's
yeah.
actually pretty decent. Yeah.
APAC is what 11 a.m. for me, 10 a.m. for China and Korea, or around there. So yeah, okay, you got to wake up for some esports, but it's not so late it's not so early in the day that
Okay.
people aren't awake yet. Most people, I'm going to say most. Sometimes I don't wake up by then. A lot of times I don't. But yeah, okay. I mean that's a reasonable time. I don't think it's the worst. That's by the way, if that doesn't get fixed at all by anything, that's just the nature of interregional competition. If they were on
Sure.
LAN, hey, where's the LAN? Is it
Yeah.
in Katowice? Is it in Germany? Is it in LA? Wherever that LAN position is, there's going to be a bad
That's
time
the
zone for
time.
somebody. Hey, when it goes to Texas and LA, that's just going to be bad for the Chinese fans or the Korean fans or whatever. But
The
it's
thing
what
is,
you got to put up for.
like these other scenes have the same discussions though. Like CS is currently discussing if their match length is too volatile, and that fans can't really calculate when their favorite team is playing because MR15, which is 15 rounds,
Sure.
is too long, and like the difference between a 16 and
You got
1
OTs.
and like
Yeah,
like a
OTs, yeah.
25 to 24 or to 23 is like very, very different in game length, especially if like it's a best of 3 series or a best of 5 to just sitting there the entire day. So like other scenes are having the same discussion also about viewer fatigue, by the way, and player fatigue, where it feels like League has fixed this the best, where it's compartmentalized, everyone just follows their little narrative. It also doesn't feel like I feel really punished in my enjoyment if I don't catch APAC because I don't understand what is about to come.
In Overwatch.
Yes. Like if I don't watch APAC, I don't know who the behemoths are and what they're running. I guess now I know it's Shanghai. Like if I'm not like, I'm sure if I'm only an NA watcher, I'm not seeing Chengdu come from a mile away. Even though I watched, I didn't see it either.
100%.
That's beside the point. But
yeah,
you know, it's like it's almost like
if everyone catches up in Hawaii, that's your catch up.
It's like you're reading this book, and in this book, there's that you're getting like bards singing these songs of these great like other nations that are fighting like glorious battles. Like, oh yeah, that's the side point. Whenever we're sitting at the campfire, some bard sings. And suddenly you get into a war and you just get utterly crushed. And you're like, wait, you were a side character in my story, bro. Like, where did you come from? Right? And like, that's what it would feel like to me if I didn't have the full picture.
But you're not supposed. I don't think you're supposed to get the full picture because there's so many games.
You're not.
Even with this amount of games, you're not. I don't think anyone's supposed to watch every single game unless you are the most hardcore fan of the world or you get paid to do it. No one's watching literally every single game though.
Exactly. I think two points. I think you feel that way because your job, it's difficult to kind of watch it all. I don't even watch all of them, right? Valiant is getting glossed over. Vancouver, love you, getting glossed over, right? Like you can't watch every game. However, I think there are vehicles to help bridge that gap for people who do want to watch that. Again, I'll continue beating this drum until they do it. Watchpoint should be its own show. Give me a 30-minute show, middle of the week.
There's a reason for
recounting all of these things. Sure, of course.
It used to be in season 1. Just saying, and then then it wasn't.
And then it wasn't.
I can tell you right now that the talent that were involved with it would have much preferred if it stayed its own show, but that was out of their control.
100%.
To
Of
be fair,
course.
it's
I
also
get
like
that.
10 people watching. You know, like it's if
Yes, it
I'm-
is content for those people who want to consume everything but can't. That's what you're tailoring this to.
it's I hate consumers so much, dude. Like, in order for this to work, it almost would have to be like a top tank power ranking type of format, right? Like, everything now needs to be a listicle or like a power ranking type of thing to get into Zoomer brains, bro. You numbskulled morons. You
That's
don't appreciate
fine. You
any
can do
storytelling,
that.
bro. I fucking
You're
hate this generation.
because this is something that can never be changed. That this
Yeah.
is Yiska. Sadly, this is some boomer yells at cloud kind of thing. Because
Yes.
I just
100%.
like I just it can't. That's just we're talking about inevitability here. It's just you can't help it.
You realize we picked the hero pool by playing marbles, right? Like you get this? Has it seeped in now that we have to like sugarcoat a lot of this stuff to get it down?
Actually, I thought the marbles was kind of clever. I thought there's a fun way to do it. It's
I
just, at
agree.
the end of the
I
day, it's
enjoyed
random,
it,
so who
but
cares?
yes, 100%. Like, it's not a criticism of Platchat and how they did it and how the league wanted to do things. I think it's specifically tailored because this community is more lighthearted, isn't taking themselves super seriously, and I think you can do that with the proper vehicle.
It's just, dude, it just feels like, you know, you have this sushi chef and he has been honing his craft for like 50 years, and you sit down at the table, and as he serves you the sushi, you pull your pants down and start eating it with crayons instead of chopsticks. You know, that's sort of like how we're wrapping up. Like, whatever players are doing 12 hours a day, we just have to like TikTokify our experience of this garbage, bro. Like, I like.
How are we TikTokifying our experience?
I mean, we're
Maybe I've
already doing it to a decent chunk, right? Like, we have to make it fun for some reason, more so than all other esports. Apparently, it's not.
What fun?
Hey,
I mean, like, I feel like the desk is way less analytical than in any other esports.
You understand that's because, and there's been some statements from some talent regarding this. I think Uber might have. I'm not actually. I don't want to throw anyone's name in there because I don't remember. I'd have to actually look this up and find out. My memory believes it was somebody, but I'm just gonna retract that name because I don't want to accidentally put someone's name
I
in
think
there,
it was Uber. Yeah.
I think there was a response to one of your tweets
Mhm.
actually, and it was something like, analytical content just doesn't get the viewership. Just people don't care about that, which maybe is exactly what you're talking about. You're like, okay,
Overwatch,
yes, that's the TikTokifying, but at the same time, like, I don't know that's different from any esport. I think that's literally and not even esports, the traditional sports too. I think the majority of people that watch traditional sports aren't there to watch telestrations.
I agree.
We're still getting them in Germany regularly, and we're still in other esports like in Valorant. There will be Sean Gears at a telestrator explaining shit, and people will enjoy that type of content.
If you don't start it early, I'm of the opinion that yes, we will most competitive, title sports, whatever you want to call it, competitive ventures, will become kind of the least common denominator. Will be about entertainment. I actually just did something, kind of reviewed and was talking with somebody about this recently, looking at the NBA and looking at how entertainment driven a lot of it is, but there still is analysis in there because at the foundation, there is like a want and a need for it. We either haven't had enough time to build that audience up, or we failed to drive them early enough to want that, if that makes sense, right? Like, that's a bigger discussion regarding the Overwatch
I don't even
League,
think there's a lack of analysis. When I watch Watchpoint, it's just like they talk about, here or our predictions. Here's why we think a certain team is going to be winning or maybe losing, and yada yada yada. That's the key. If I'm a fan who's trying to catch up, I'm a fan of only a certain team, and I don't watch these other teams. That's the best time for me to catch up on what's going on. Maybe on the other regions as well.
Totally.
I'd probably just from an average fan POV probably tune out if it gets too, gritty. If it gets too crunchy in terms of here's a fucking algorithm for you to consume. Let's do some trigonometry on screen. It's not, that doesn't hold anybody's attention.
100%.
that's for VOD reviews later. That's for like Custer doing VOD reviews on stream, or me doing VOD reviews on stream. That's that extra content, and it takes hours to go through maps doing that, because depending on what kind of depth you actually want, the game is so extremely complicated. That's what ends up happening. And when I watch content from, I'm going to use League of Legends again, their content, they don't do heavily analytical stuff on their shows either. They will save that for other things and other types of content. They have specific content that gets uploaded to YouTube that's a little bit more analytical, like let's break down this team fight. Chat used to do that on the LoL Esports YouTube channel. So
that's the big problem. It is normal, but we don't have the other vehicle to kind of push that towards. And yes, viewers of the show have heard us debate this and talk about this a ton, but I'll still drive this point home. There should be a Jat breakdown. There should be a sideshow talking with players and reviewing this. And we almost had that earlier on, but I don't know where that's gone.
I don't think there's time on a watch point. This time,
no, it can't be exactly. It has to be peripheral, right? I think if you want to keep watch point the way that it is, yes, I think it's fine. I think what they're doing right now is fine, but I think the issue that I have is that they're already getting, from my understanding, from what you guys had mentioned earlier, that like you're already trying to pare down the analysis because it's already feeling like we're losing people. It's already too much. I think there are just ways to offset it. You can leave it how it is, but I think there's just more opportunity for content is what I'll leave it on.
I think a big part why, like, it's not just the nature of this game, right? Being pretty casual in that regard. And also like the game being super hard to discern. But it's also like we selected people based on which part of the world they've been shed out to, right? Like, oh yeah, you've been born in Boston, so now you're a Boston fan. Nobody looks at the gameplay and goes like, oh, I'm a fan of this gameplay. For some teams it works, for Chengdu, for instance, and that's why like that stuff is interesting. And then I would assume like if you then look at the selection of, or like, if you did more analytical content around Chengdu, that probably did better in the past than it was. Mm-hmm. But it's like we're selecting on such superficial like points, where it's just like it's more about the conclusions than the process in pretty much everything. Like you're looking at where they are in the standings, you're like more concerned with who got the win, not how. And it's like, I don't know. It's really disappointing, and it feels like it has never been worse than it is right now.
I'll tell you, this is where this will probably be my last comment on it as well. But this is where I see Overwatch 2 as being an area of growth, because you're ideally having a game that's a little bit more favored for individual mechanics, for your own ability to pop off, and you have a game where you could appreciate individual skill a lot more. And that's the one thing I think has been missing a lot from Overwatch as a game, not even just professionally, just overall, into how team dependent it is. I think you need a more mechanically dependent game, because you, in a way, you do want to foster some sort of idolization of pro players like they have in games like Valorant, where you have a lot of fans that like certain pros because of how good they are, and that's probably a better reason to follow a team, because you like these players, perhaps their personalities, but definitely their gameplay, rather than I'm from this city, therefore I'm a fan of this team, even though I know that's the American sports model. As a non-American, it definitely flies over my head a little bit, but we don't have that in this game. You don't have a lot of the average audience kind of idolizing certain players, unless they're like, the literal best players. But even then, I don't like, sure, Super's like a mega big personality, but most of his fan base make fun of his gameplay. They don't idolize his gameplay, right? So it's very different in our community, and maybe a game that favors more mechanical ability will kind of fix that. But that's going to be my final thought on that. Joe, do you want to end with something here, and we'll move on?
I agree that Overwatch 2 has a lot of opportunity to kind of right the wrongs, or take off the training wheels and remove some of the more experimental things of the format. And it should do a lot of good for a lot of those same reasons, right? Giving players more longevity, giving them more stylized personalities, whether it be gameplay or just the way that they talk. So big hopium in that regard.
Cool. So now we went on a huge tangent that wasn't planned, but it was good content anyway. Let's get to dive back into where we were on playoffs and to kind of cap off playoffs
Yes.
discussion a little bit before we head into Countdown Cup discussion is just early speculation. I don't want to call it a prediction because that has a different
Okay.
connotation. So not a prediction, just a speculation.
So I can't make meme videos of it, AVRL? Is that what you're telling me? Yeah, I can't just jump down people's throats.
Do what you want, Joe. I'm not gonna chain you down.
Fair enough.
Speculation on where you guys think playoffs are gonna land. Let's get the obvious ones out of the way. You have Dallas on 15 points and Shanghai on 18 points. They're locked. Forget about anybody making meaningful catch-ups at that stage. Shanghai are at this stage guaranteed first seed. Dallas are all but guaranteed first seed. I think there's only one way another team would catch up. So you have San Francisco, Houston on 9 points each. If they go 4-0 and win a bunch of Countdown Cup matches and maybe win the grand finals, they could catch up to Dallas Field if Dallas Field goes 0-4. So it's not guaranteed that Dallas Field finish first seed, but I think they've all, like, theoretically, I don't see Dallas Field not winning matches here. I don't see them going 0-4. So theoretically speaking, Dallas Field are first seed. And anything else beyond that, guys? Who wants to start in terms of where you see the sort of points landing off and who gets to go where?
It's difficult in NA, obviously, because we still have another stage to kind of go through, another tournament cycle to play through. But my mind immediately draws to, like, the narrative of this season has been that 2-horse race where it's Dallas, Shanghai. Obviously, summer wasn't. Well, I think we'll probably see some sort of clash of the two teams again, but I have a funny gut feeling, and it's unfounded, but I don't know that we're going to get that final, that grand final, that Dallas Fuel Shanghai. It's the rubber match. We're going to the trilogy.
Because Fuel got knocked out early in some showdown.
It's not because Fuel get knocked out early. If
no, I'm saying if Summer Showdown taint your kind of belief in Fuel is what I'm getting to.
A little bit. I think less than I think people are immediately going to jump at in the especially the YouTube and Reddit comments. I think there is obviously we have to wait for the playoff patch or the playoff patch. See what that looks like. That could change a lot. But as it stands right now, I think with what the meta has kind of situated on, I like a lot of teams' chances in NA to upset Dallas. And that's not because they have a lack of experience. It's not because they have bad players, right? The whole team's good. There is some glaring holes in this team that can be kind of capitalized on, or I guess that's how I'd put it. Capitalize on that can draw these close.
So who makes what? Like who's your top three and where? Who do you think is going to be in the playoffs? Top three NA, top two.
You can't count Dallas out, right? Dallas has to be there. I just don't know how far they go in playoffs. If I'm looking at the picture right now, I'm not sure exactly how far they go, and that feels really weird, especially if you put your brain back in the melee, right? Like, oh my God, Dallas is doing so good. How do they not make playoffs and make the grand finals? I'm not sure right at this point.
So
Shock, I'm scared of.
Okay.
Yes, they're the only. It feels like the only other team that has a immense, high pressure experience when it comes to playoffs and high stakes matches.
Not all their players, but
not the same team. Exactly. This is not that same team. It's difficult to kind of shed that narrative, though. It is hard to get out from behind those rose tinted glasses with this team. Maybe they can get it together, but it really does feel like 2 through 5. It could just be a smattering of anybody of San Francisco, Houston, LA, Washington, and maybe even Atlanta, given an outside chance. I don't see them going farther, or securing that third seed. I think that's difficult to say, but yeah, I think Glads can turn it around, as milk toast as that sounds. I have some personal stake in Justice. I think where they're sitting, with what I think the meta will be when it comes to Countdown Cup, I can see them maybe sneaking into the third seed. I can see Houston kind of slipping out. I can see San Francisco continuing the trend of just having a difficult time grasping and coordinating these new metas, and being extremely slow to start. So yeah, I'll put my money on Dallas. I'll say Dallas, Houston, Justice. I don't know if Glads can
Feel
get
good
it
about
done.
those.
Yeah.
And one other team aside from Shanghai in APAC as well.
What's a spicy one? I don't think Spark's gonna do it. Yeah, it's gonna be boring. I think it's probably just Shanghai Seoul. I like Chengdu. I like what I saw from them. Actually, you know what? No, I'll say Shanghai Chengdu. I
Okay.
think it's as long as the meta continues the way that it's going. I think Echo comes back for playoffs. Playoff patch be damned. I like where Chengdu sits.
Let's just assume we don't know what the playoff batch is because this is pointless to really factor that in. We'll just assume nothing major shakes things up because we can't even make the assumption of what that shakeup could be. So we'll just veto out any discussions of playoffs patches for now. Yiska, your thoughts on like who your front runners are going into auto seed?
So it's really just about like who makes top 3 at the end of the season, right? We're not talking about playoff implications. Okay,
well, top 3 to get into the playoffs. Yeah, top 3 and top 2
season
to get into the playoffs.
Yeah. So I think what is really interesting is this like Outlaws, Gladiators, Reign trifecta there, where they all play each other in some way, and then also the Mayhem. I think that one is fat, and I think because Justice has such a weak strength of schedule by comparison, even though they're still playing Houston and Gladiators, and a lot of that, their outcome of their season will be determined this weekend.
Do you mean strong strength of schedule or weak? As in
relatively weak, right? Like
comparatively,
being they have a difficult strength of schedule, or they have a easy strength of schedule. Easy.
Yeah.
Does that mean they have a strong strength of schedule, or am I getting the terminology mixed up?
So
I think it's mixed up, but I see where I know what you mean.
Easy strength of.
It's strong in the sense that it's good for them.
Yeah.
But I think in the general
strong schedule,
terminology,
isn't it? Or
it's a good schedule.
It's not strong.
I think for you,
the higher strength of schedule, the stronger the teams are they play, right?
Yes.
And the weaker strength of schedule,
generally,
the
weaker
the teams.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand terminology because in my mind, I thought a weak strength of schedule means it's going to be hard for them. To which I'm like, it's going to be pretty easy.
Okay. I understand the confusion. No, but like playing both Defiant and Vancouver is pretty easy.
Should be.
Especially in comparison to their direct opposition. Of course, like the Hawaii points will also determine a lot. I think just like by the nature of those games, like one or two of those guys ahead of them will directly disqualify themselves from that discussion. But I think that's an interesting one. It honestly really depends on meta, who gets ahead there. Out of these 3, I feel like Reign. I don't know if NA learned, like a lot of it comes down to what kind of meta we're playing. And if, like in regards to season playoffs, if a lot of NA teams woke up and go like, okay, we can play the best relative to our region and then eat crow, like once it comes to season playoffs, because we're not beating anyone in Asia with our shit. That's an interesting one for me for sure. I think, and like Shock is sort of like got off easy. They have probably the easiest strength schedule, even though like the Monte Carlo seems to disagree that Justice has a slightly easier one. I think they will just go 3-1, win Boston, win Vancouver, win Defiant. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's a weird situation. I will say, is there a more boring and invisible team this season than the Defiant? Jesus Christ, have you not heard anything from them? Not only are they will barely get in. You don't see them appear in media.
And you know,
They're not in any stage playoff qualification thingies. They're just playing their games.
Yeah.
Nobody knows
know-
anything. They might as well not be there, right? Like,
do you know how many people gave me shit for my preseason power rankings, putting Defiant low? Like, oh my god, Avril put Defiant so low.
Yeah.
What is he talking about? Why would he put Defiant so low? They have Sato and Hisu. Yeah, okay. Where you at now, fellas?
They
at
had
me.
a chance.
Where you at?
They
Why you so
had a
quiet?
chance. This team is good. I think they have good pieces. Maybe that's the better way to put it. I think they have a good foundation if they want to build for the future. I think the saving grace for this team has literally been Aspire. Like they're not completely invisible because of Aspire,
Yeah.
right? And the success story that kid's been. It like outside of that, yeah, it is. It is. I couldn't tell you half that like what this team style is. It never seems like they're gonna go deep anyways. So
Yeah.
why bother? They should like when you look at them on paper, they should be performing well. And they're not performing poorly, but it's either not consistent or just actually poor.
It's like,
Yeah.
the thing is, like, I think their viewership is still pretty stable because, like, that organization seems to be doing something well in their regional markets, right? But there's something to be said about a team like even Paris, sitting at the same score, have way more attention on them for being a like a team that's
Is
you
that
know,
expectations, though?
overperforming.
Because they defied expectations, they came up.
Yeah.
Ironically,
might be-
they defied expectations, not the Defiant, who weren't defiant enough.
Yeah.
Defiant needed to defy a little bit more.
They haven't defied
to
enough,
actually get
really.
noticed.
The
Yeah.
only thing they've defied is their own fans' expectations. Sadly,
The same
who-
defined, right? Like just mediocre at best every season.
Yep.
They're
Yep.
probably the worst performing team in Overwatch League history.
Okay, just get real. Because you already brought Defiant. I'm just going to throw this at you real quick. Do Defiant still make play-ins? Are they in the top
Yeah.
9? Are they somewhere between 4 and 9? Are they number 9?
Because I mean,
They're number 9
Bayham's
for you.
strength of schedule is just like too strong, right? Like,
And they're playing with checkmate.
Does anyone
Yes.
disagree? Does anyone disagree with the following statement? Because I was going to say as well, like, what do you guys think of play-ins? Who's going to make it in? And an easy
Yeah.
question would be to ask, who doesn't
Who
make it in?
doesn't
Does
make it in,
anyone
yeah.
disagree with Florida, Spitfire, Vancouver missing out?
Oh, it's so
even with
hard.
even
too.
with OG coming back, let's just throw that in there as well. Throw that into the equation. Does everyone? Are we all? Because I'll say it. Yeah, I think Florida Spitfire Titans missed out.
Yeah.
Do you two agree with that, or do you think Florida maybe make it in and a different team misses out?
I would love nothing more to throw out a hot take here, but there is literally nothing.
It would have
You need
to
a
be
miracle.
It would have to be Boston, Paris, or Toronto shitting the bed. One of those three
Well,
teams.
100% agreed. And they're at a point. The most likely feels like it's Toronto. I don't see Boston performing all that poorly, and this is just completely ignoring the schedules. This is a Florida, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't heard anything from OG, correct? Like they're still going ahead with checkmate regarding the Florida
He's
mayhem.
back.
he's back, and I think he would be playing if he's back.
So let me tell you one thing, because you brought up Boston. I will say that Boston's strength of schedule is such that they go up against Paris, which I think Paris is the stronger team. They go up against San Francisco Shock, which I think Shock is a better team. They have a free win versus Vancouver, and then they have a swing match versus Florida. Now,
Yeah.
if they lose that match versus Florida and Florida get a win elsewhere, there's a chance
sneak in.
that Florida sneak in.
If OG comes back, and this, but even then, like you don't have Echo at this point.
It's
Yeah, Yaki
doable
Tracer,
though.
we
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. But then it's the Chengdu example of like, okay, do you want BQB on Sombra? What is the second DPS looks like? Are our projections of the meta correct? Which we'll get to. I don't know. It's tough. I see that outside chance, but it feels like an outside chance though.
It
Yeah.
feels like you should. So are you aligned? Are you aligned with Mayhem Spitfire Titans then? At the end of the day,
I agree.
Are
Yeah.
aligned? Is anyone disaligned? Do we all agree bottom 3 for East is going to be Valiant, Charge, and Excelsior? Does anyone not think that?
I think Spark might drop, and that's
Below
not
New York.
because. Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so just to put things in context, Spark have Seoul, Philadelphia, Chengdu, and Guangzhou. Guangzhou should be a fairly free game.
Yeah.
The other 3 games could be tough. So there's a non-zero chance that they go 1-3, which would hurt them.
Mhm.
Excelsior have Philadelphia, Chengdu, and who else? Valiant, Shanghai. So Valiant's an auto win, Shanghai's an auto loss. Philadelphia, you'd say it shouldn't be a good game, but they're 2-0 versus Philly
Yeah.
this season. If anything, they have a secret. They have the fucking kryptonite versus Philadelphia. Chengdu should be a loss. So I can see New York going 2-2, beating Philly and Valiant, and maybe Hangzhou going 1-3 if they're prepared unlucky. So that brings the score lines to
It's done to
what is
maps. It's
Hangzhou on
even.
8, New York's on 8
Oh no,
as well.
yeah.
New York's on 7. No shit.
If you
Hangzhou-
go,
if
if you go
Hangzhou even
8
win
and 8,
New York would need to win
Yeah.
1 extra just to tie them.
It's super hard for
it's
New York.
tough. Yeah, now that you put it that way, it is tough.
They could.
That's the only other team. Yeah, agreed. They could. I
They're probably
think
too far behind.
this is the more likely region to see kind of a dramatic shift. I think, if I'm going to be completely honest, I like the Sparks personnel. I've said that since day one. I've thought very highly of the players that they have. However, the management decisions have not been great. The coaching changes have me a little concerned. And that's not because I think the coaches are bad, but when you have so much rotation, it's not good.
Can I paint you a picture? So if Hangzhou lose to Guangzhou and they lose to everyone else and they go 0-4, then New York going 2-2 gets them on the same points as Hangzhou, and that's a tiebreaker. Or if New York beat an extra team, so if New York, they beat Philly, they beat Valiant, so 2 beatable teams for them, and Valiant only because they've again got Philadelphia because they got Philadelphia's kryptonite, they would have to then win against either Shanghai or Chengdu, the top 2 teams based on strength of recency bias from Summer Showdown. So they would have to upset one of those 2 teams if Hangzhou don't then lose to Guangzhou. And obviously if both happens, New York just get to go in there for free. But assuming only one of those 2 things happen, where Hangzhou shit the bed, go 0-4, or New York play high to expectations and go 3-1 instead of 2-2, it's one of those 2 things basically needs to happen just for a tiebreaker. So that's where things get really rough for New York.
This has me wondering which region is more likely, or what team's more likely to actually upset. Is New York more likely in your guys' minds to move into Sparks' position, granted the pathway that AVRL's painted, or the Florida Mayhem kind of unseating either Boston or maybe even Toronto? Like, it feels tight. It's not an easy decision.
Likely.
Say again, Yiska?
I think Mayhem is more likely to make it in than Excelsior.
Really?
I think Mayhem would have to beat. I think Mayhem would have to not only beat Boston, they would also have to beat Atlanta.
Yeah, and that's on top of like bringing back somebody into the fold.
They need one of Boston, Paris, or Japan to shit the bed.
I think they beat Outlaws.
You think they beat Outlaws?
You think
as well?
the Florida Mayhem beats Outlaws
and Uprising, and that's that. And then they gotta pray that it's enough. Like one of those other teams.
I need to hear what you think this meta is.
Just before you say that, the picture that this paints now is that if Florida go 2-2, they're on 7 points, which is currently 1 ahead of Boston, Paris, Toronto. So if any of those teams go 0-4, they're done. But if one of those teams goes 1-3, which I think is very likely because you have some real freebies in here. So for example, Boston get Vancouver, that's a freebie. Paris are doing far too well to not get a single win here. I don't see there's no chance for Paris. Also have London. I'm sorry, that's a freebie. What did Toronto? Did Toronto get any freebies in here? Let's have a look real quick. Toronto have London, so everybody gets a freebie. So that being said, Florida going 2-2, which is Yiska's pathway, still only gets you into a tiebreaker.
Which with likely worse map position as well. It's really hard for Mayhem. That said, I feel like it's almost like if Mayhem makes it, you need a significantly stronger London. I think it's not out of the question that London just finds something and, for instance, become better than Eternal.
Steadily improving, but yeah,
like get an upset win against Eternal at the end of the.
That's not a. as much as I say Toronto get a free win there, I don't know. Toronto could be very weak and London could be very strong.
Very true, yeah.
Malphite and just dominate Toronto. There's non-zero chance of that. So maybe there as well. So to answer the question, I can see Toronto shitting the bed more likely than I can see Hangzhou or Fusion shitting the bed. And that's the other question on this, by the way. The other one to bring up is that Fusion could actually go 0-4 here because Fusion have
Yes, they could.
Seoul, they have New York, which they've lost to twice already.
Yeah.
They have Hangzhou, and they have Shanghai. They could go 0-4.
Yeah,
And if they go 0-4, New York, once again, the narrative and the joke is not even a joke at this stage if it happens every single time of Philadelphia gifting New York a free pass into X and Y situation playoffs this time is like it will be fulfilled. That destiny, that prophecy will once again be fulfilled for the third time in a row. So there's that option.
I think Seoul will like on paper, right? Like Chengdu has a way easier schedule than Seoul does. I feel like Seoul will come back hard this cycle. Like it's not even based on what I think the meta will play. It's just like there's many things like certain in the Overwatch League, and one of those certain things is Gesture and Profit towards the end of the season will play significantly better than they did in all previous parts of the season. Hence why they've been called slackers before.
So, just for the viewers as well, the listeners, we are previewing pathways for how teams get into playoffs and other situations. We will be diving a little bit deeper into very specific matches in a later portion of the show. So we're going to save all the good juice in terms of real nitty-gritty matchup discussion in just a bit. But to finish things out, I don't know, Yiska, did you give me a top 3 NA and top 2 APAC? I don't actually know from you yet.
Top 3 NA, Dallas is locked in. Shock's locked in for me.
Okay.
Can you even not say Rain? Is that allowed? They had one match down, right?
You can say it. I'll tell you what I think after, but you can say it.
Okay. I'm saying Outlaws. Fuck it.
Didn't you also say Mayhem could beat Outlaws?
Yeah, they could.
Yeah.
What is this? I don't understand. You just
I'm excited to hear what you think about this meta.
So you said Mayhem could beat Outlaws, but then you're putting Outlaws in your top 3.
Because they have one more win than all the other teams, right?
Agreed.
So that's a big advantage, I think, here. I think they will realistically go 2-2.
They have enough of a buffer.
The problem is, like, there will probably be a 3-1 out of that group, and they will then have a better map score, so it's hard to say. But yeah, I don't know, like, I think that one win is so big. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's also Justice just because they can just farm up. They really, realistically, probably just need one win this weekend. Farm the other teams 3-0. Look great in map differential. And also squeak in. Bro, it's so close there. Like, if I'm saying Outlaws, I'm saying...
Dallas and Outlaws then. Or are you no longer locking Outlaws?
Here's the thing, right? Like, we have 4 teams vying for the position. Oh my god, I kind of convinced Now I'm convincing myself of Justice, dude.
I need to put on some, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, like real intense music.
Shit, dude.
Yes, I'm gonna need an answer. A, B, C, or D.
I'm going D, the Washington Justice. For the main reason being, I think Mayhem will be significantly above a free win for all of these teams that have to play Mayhem. Mayhem will kill 2 of these streams.
Okay.
Interesting.
Congratulations. We are now on to the $200 round. So we passed the $100 round. Because I agree with that. I will give you my thoughts now. And I have Dallas, Justice, And wait for it. This one's fucking
What?
spicy. Third team, my third seed team after Countdown Cup that are directly seeded into Texas is Paris Eternal.
I'm here for it, but
Yo,
paint me
what are
that
you
picture.
smoking? That's almost like
yeah, I want to hear this. Let me.
Let me take a puff real quick.
Yeah.
it's almost mathematically impossible.
I have Paris going 4-0 the stage. Not only do I have them 4-0, their schedule is fucking easy. Outside of Dallas,
the Dallas
it's
Fuel.
really mega easy. They have Dallas, and then they have Boston, and then they have London, and then they have
Toronto.
No, that's
very
a,
winnable schedule.
Oh yeah.
that's a take. See, that's a take usually
Hang on.
only Joe has been able to get off on this show.
Hang on,
I'm sort of excited. I'm also just like
careful.
Guys, what happened was Avast and Avala pay me a lot of money,
yeah.
Fair. Okay. fair.
and we
Can't
are
shame
we
the boy.
are the AV trifecta of the Overwatch verse. We have to stand in solidarity with each other, and so we're all locked in for Paris. No, I think Paris go 4-0 here, and not only do they go 4-0, that gets them in. I think they go to Countdown Cup and get another point there as well.
Oh shit!
I have Paris, Washington, Dallas as my three teams.
I like it.
It's not a fucking prediction; it's a speculation. All right, guys, you can calm down just a tiny bit. And then my eastern region is really boring. It's just Shanghai, Chengdu. Chengdu's strength of schedule is far too easy. Seoul, they have a harder strength of schedule. They will not get more points than Chengdu. That is my honest answer there. Chengdu have the one of the easiest strength schedules possible.
What you
they
just
simply cannot.
I can't. Like what you just said about Eternal, I think it's more likely that they go in for. Literally more likely.
Wow.
No shot,
Wow.
right? Certainly not.
Can I just say both answers feel pretty extreme? Like this is quite polarizing. I feel like 4-0 is quite a hot take. But it's hot enough that I'd be willing to settle for you.
Dude, what you're saying is they will not just beat Dallas Fuel once, they will beat them twice in order to get that 1 point because they go into the Asian bracket. Then they will lose against the Asian team, will get into the lower bracket where Dallas Fuel will wait for them. They will beat the Dallas Fuel, get swiftly disposed of.
Beat them twice. If they can beat them once, I don't understand. Anyway,
because
what I was trying to say is your 0-4 take is way fucking hotter than my 4-0 take.
No, it's not. It's not.
It really is.
No.
Is 0-4 take hotter than
Bro.
4-0 take?
Leave a comment
Please don't
below.
You're way
hot?
too overestimating how hot this team is.
The other one
Come
is
on, man.
fair
Like I'm a fan of their progress as well, but Jesus Christ,
So,
dude.
okay, so we've landed on 2. Okay, I'll say 3-1 then. But you still say 0-4? Come on, there's no way.
No. What
you're
you said,
cracked.
what you said is they will get 1 point from Countdown Cup after going 4-0. That is literally less likely to happen than them going 0-4. Why do they have to beat Dallas twice? Once again, they start with Dallas, and then they get to Countdown Cup, where Dallas is likely waiting again.
Why is Dallas the team going to Countdown Cup? Just first of all.
Oh, you're saying
I
Dallas is not going to Countdown Cup?
Hey, I don't want to get into good content until we get there. But I'm not saying it's a guarantee. I'm not saying it's guaranteed.
Nah.
I think it's a good percentage chance, but I'm not saying it's a.
What is
100%.
happening?
I'll give Shanghai.
Literally,
I don't give Dallas 100%. What happened is like Joe, my faith in Dallas was shook a little bit. It was.
That's right. Shaketh.
Has been shooketh.
Shake
Your
'em.
faith should be the most shaken here, Yiska, considering how fucking burnt you got from
He's the
Summer Show.
prophet.
No. I'm going hard. Like
The Dallas cleric, the apostle of the fuel.
Cleric.
The ye who have faith.
Dude, 4-0. Like, what is it that you think? Like, why did Paris then not make it to Hawaii this time, for instance?
Because
If
they're
they're
ramping
so
up,
good.
okay? It's VCAP.
Oh, yeah.
They get better later on.
Bro,
They are
like
ramping
these
up.
guys
I don't know if that'd be
actually
tech,
think
by the way.
this is Dragon Ball Z, bro.
Getting into, either we go out of order for topic discussions or something else because
Dude.
we're almost ready just to get deep into like actual matchup discussion, but I wanted to save that for last on the show today.
Khan is Sunshine War, apparently, like just like leveling up consistently and having literally no hard cap on how high he can go. Like, I don't understand. As if this team is not entirely average in the Overwatch League, even at this point in time.
I'm so glad you accidentally added Avala to the chat and then removed her in time, so that she wouldn't have to.
Come on, guys. Come on. Like, yes, they're doing a lot. They're doing average, which is great, with a team that should be bottom 2. That is their achievement. It's not that they are one of the best 3 teams in the Overwatch League at the moment with one of the bottom 3 talent lions. That's not what's happening there.
Is physically already in Dallas, so checkmate.
I can't believe you guys.
I already beat you.
This is.
What were we going to talk about next? We were going to move away from playoffs discussion into that's right, the Countdown Cup announcements. So last episode I said we weren't going to talk about the hero rotations because we want to save for this episode. Well, we've arrived now, and through the magical marbles, as Joe mentioned earlier, it was, by the way, the most highest stakes game of marbles I've ever seen in my life. Like all 4 of them, it was just like, oh my god, I've never cared so much about marbles ever, and it was great. And anyone complaining like, oh, why did they do it on marbles? This is so unfair. Like you don't understand. Marbles might as well just be a dice, or you could literally not watch the marbles and have a computer spit out a team or a name that's equal to what marbles is. It's literally random. So don't get baited, don't get triggered by marbles. It's still random. It still works. So we landed on the outer rotation here as the bans are Echo, Ash, Sigma, Lucio. Very punishing for North American teams. Who's going to start us off on this discussion?
Yeah, I agree with most of the community sentiment that this probably won't change a ton from what we've seen from the Summer Showdown, but I think this is subtly more impactful than I think people realize. I think Echo for a lot of teams, and I know AVRL, you brought this up on Plat Chat, it is kind of like a 3rd string DPS pick that you can kind of just count on a lot of the times. It's kind of good in a lot of places. You can kind of just utilize it if things aren't working. I know you rightfully pointed out Chengdu and Leave do this quite a lot, and rightfully so. Moving that off the table is a little weird. It's going to cause some picks that wouldn't normally see play, I think. And I think when we get... It also kind of shadows another point that I want to make. Lucio being removed, I think, starts to kind of chip away at the Shanghai composition that was used to kind of counteract a lot of what Chengdu is doing with the Reaper. I don't know if you can run that same composition without Lucio to kind of engage with the or help catalyze the Reaper. I think that kind of draws that into question. I think Ash Sigma is a little bit of a... those kind of feel meaningless, but I think Echo feels like a good replacement for a Reaper removal, where you want something, if the meta does kind of situate out into being what Chengdu was running, which was Brig and Zen. It's really low on-demand healing. So to kind of counter that, you want to have really, really bursty upfront damage that, Shanghai was utilizing to bust these tanks. Now, without Echo and hypothetically without Reaper, you don't really have a good solution that kind of fits within a lot of the dive framework, whether it be Wrecking Ball or Winston. The other knock-on is probably Pharah. I think Widow could be open here. But yeah, I think in a general kind of wrap up, I think this is subtly more impactful than people are kind of giving it credit for. I think Lucio and Echo are going to really kind of shake things up. Not in terms of what compositions are being run, because I think it is going to be very dive centric. It's going to be a lot of what we saw in Summer Showdown. But it's which heroes are played that are, I think the support lineups are going to be a little funky, and I think that second DPS pick, specifically probably for Asia, is going to be a little.
Can you just explain to me again what you were talking about in terms of its impact on dive? You were saying about something about dive earlier. I just want to make sure I understood correctly.
So granted, it's a little messy, but hopefully this is a good Spark Notes version. I feel like Lucio helped that Reaper composition that we saw from Shanghai.
Yep. I agree.
Right?
Yep.
The Reaper, ideally, or from my perspective, its role was upfront burst damage on tanks to punish the on-demand healing that, you know, the Chengdu composition, which was running Zenyatta Brigitte, if memory serves. That was to kind of punish that. So if we're kind of keeping that as you know, standard, if we're using that to kind of balance against, now you don't really have a good second DPS option to kind of punish that. Does that make
I
sense?
don't buy into Reaper punishing as hard as Reaper cannot be punished as his main value. For example, you want to slam in, Reaper's a difficult hero to punish with a good dive coming in versus other backline options, other DPS options. Like even Ashe is far easier to kill than a Reaper is.
Agreed. Agreed.
Sim is very easy to kill compared to Reaper. I think, and in a dive as well, in a dive versus dive as well. Dive versus dive is a very interesting discussion because when you look at the Shanghai / Chengdu specific composition, that is Tracer, Sombra, Bull, Diva, Brig, Zen. Zen is your most diveable target, except he's been bodyguarded by Brig the entire game, like
Correct.
literally 24/7. You can't actually go on any other DPSs because both Tracer and Sombra are very hard to catch. Bull's hard to lock down as well, but they all support each other, but also counter each other because Bull's hard to lock down, but then Sombra exists, which actually locks down Bull, but then Tracer exists, which actually chases down a Bull. So they both, it is easy and hard to kill opponent target. Like I would say, yeah, if you're Sombra Tracer versus Sombra Tracer, you can't catch the other DPSs. But if either Sombra gets a hack onto anybody, that's suddenly now you can. So it's actually very interesting in that regard. Yeah, I don't know. I think Reaper may still be somewhat. I think teams will try Reaper still, but Reaper losing Lucio is really rough for the Reaper.
It significantly nerfs a Reaper in particular. I think if anything, you're gonna see teams, as goofy as it sounds, I think you might see some Zarya play to kind of help bridge the gap to give Reaper the bubble like we saw. I think it was at the start of Countdown Cup? Am I? You know what I'm talking about? I just can't remember when.
I would say that Diva is a better partner for.
I agree.
Reaper for the most part.
I agree 100%. I think it's just what teams are going to try, especially within these play-in, these qualifiers, the seeding tournament, if you want to call it that. I think you might see teams try to help the Reaper as much as they can.
It's funny. It's interesting. I think Reaper will get played in a TP in sort of fashion and less of a run in your face.
Oh, really?
Because the two styles of Reaper is speed boost running your face, or TP behind you, or just TP into you, or just TP in front of you, like just TP in general. You saw some of this playstyle coming through from when Prophet was playing Reaper. He would just TP in your face or directly behind you, and he just wouldn't give a fuck and just go in, and just trust that his team would be there. So I think that TP into team or TP behind team style will still exist. We'll have to see what kind of support revolves around that. I think Echo Ashe is actually pretty damaging. And that's maybe something that the audience, the fans look at and think like, maybe not impactful. Yeah, Sigma deletes double shield. Lucio pretty much deletes Brawl. Teams might try Brawl, but it will fail without Lucio. Ryan, I don't think Ryan can function, especially not versus a dive without Lucio, even with the Lucio is hard. To which people say, what about the sim? You can just TP around. Yeah, you get one TP. You get one. Okay, it's very different. Echo Ashe actually damages dive, like standard dive, quite a lot, and this is going to push teams to do more Tracer Sombra. There would have been more variation in dive if Ashe and Echo were available, because if you remember back in Melee, and even in Junjiao's for APAC before we got to Hawaii, a lot of Echo, a lot of Ashe was still being played, for as dive options, and those two dive options gone, you're pretty much forced to go Tracer Sombra every time now.
Yeah, that feels like a lock. I think the map pool may not even.
We're not gonna get there just yet.
Yeah,
Is this got any thoughts on rotation heroes?
I feel like while it seems pretty clearly defined, and I agree with you that probably Tracer Sombra is probably going to be the archetype, I also think there's a bunch of let's not forget we're also getting the hit scan nerfs, which
yes.
So that in itself should be impactful. I'm not sure, what do you guys think about Farracoms in that context? Also,
wait,
even certain teams peppering in some Genji or Doomfist.
Doomfist gets owned by Sombra. That's a no-go. Doomfist, people in anywhere between silver and plat will tell you, oh, Doomfist is great into Bull. It's not. Bull is too mobile. Bull
Sure.
doesn't care about being punched. Doomfist does not do much against Bull. Doomfist does far better against slower, more stationary tanks. And what did you say again? Fire, the other option. Weak. Personally, Fire is a great counter versus Brawl. Fire was specifically a counter versus Brawl, actually, because they failed to shoot upwards.
Right.
Now, Fire versus Dive, who do you shoot? Do you shoot a Sombra? No.
Yeah.
You shoot a Tracer? No. Do you shoot a Ball? No. You shoot a Diva? Lol, that's a fucking Diva. That's like your Fire counter. You can only shoot the Briggs in. That's it. That's your only talk. That's
correct.
All you got.
Agreed. I think we have to be careful with Wrecking Ball in particular, because I don't think NA is running Wrecking Ball at all.
I think they will run some. I don't think they're going to.
Just as well,
two
right?
Camps here. There's actually 3 camps here. There's
They
3
better
camps.
fucking not.
3 camps are NA are hard pivoting to Ball. NA are not pivoting to Ball at all, which is what you. Is that what you're saying? It might be what you're saying.
I have a funny feeling they're going to try it, but I think the successful teams will not be playing.
The third camp is some NA teams will try, others won't, and that's where I sit. I sit in that third camp where I believe certain NA teams will be going balls to the wall. I did that on purpose, and others will refuse to do that at all. Will decide that that's not the best option. That's not the best use of their time. Funny enough, I think Dallas is one of those teams that will not go to the ball because I think Fearless Winston will always be a win condition, and not playing Fearless on Winston is. That's a throw. Just grab your L now. Just get your L if you don't want to play Fearless on Winston. Yeah. So I don't think Fire is going to be that impactful. Everyone's like, "Oh, Fire meta." No, it's not going to be Fire meta. I don't see that at all.
I think it's another one of those picks that I think certain teams are going to try. I think you could probably expect that of Glads on specific maps, maybe on points.
Please don't.
I agree. I think it is a bait. I agree. I 100%. I don't think NA. I mean, as a pick in this meta, it feels like it's just again, it's another Sombra bait.
It gets owned by Sombra. Yeah, that's why you don't play Genji either. It gets owned by Sombra. Everything gets owned by Sombra. Sadly.
Yeah. When you finally, funny game design thing, when you shut down people's ability to use their spells, suddenly the spell heroes get real bad.
So I would trust me, I wouldn't mind seeing a Genji meta, and I'm sure Charge will be one of the first teams right at the tip of the spearhead that are saying, "Hey, Troy wants to play a Genji, let's go." Yeah, but they will go up against the good Sombras. They're like, yeah, this ain't working.
Yeah.
It is not good. It does feel like Tracer Sombra is the hotness.
Thing is, like, there's so many teams that just can't run Tracer Sombra because they don't have the personnel.
I know.
So they got to find something out about themselves, especially like, are they actually going to play? Like, I'm not even sure what they're playing in terms of tank lines as well. Like, okay, let's think of Houston. Like, the fuck are they doing now?
Yeah.
Like, that Sigma ban is also like a ton fucker for them. Like, like that one, like the rest is already pretty bad for them because they want to play Juby on Lucio, unless you want to put Jake in again, which once again bones your season playoff stuff. Because, like, let's be honest, like, everyone I talked to was just like, "Oh, Juby's playing Brigitte against us. Well, I guess that's free." Like that's
get out.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Jesus.
I mean, if you look at it statistically as well, like,
take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I mean, NA coaches are. I think I don't know if it's a psychological mechanism of just like coping with whatever is happening there, but there's a lot of certainty going around for sure. Sigma, like, Piggy's the best Sigma in the league.
Sure, but I mean, yes, I agree, but that's not getting played.
It can't be played because it's banned.
That's the point. The point is it's not getting played.
Yes. Even if it wasn't banned, I don't think it's getting played.
Why not? You ban even Ball. Just Ball is a ban where you can then play Sigma.
Sure, yes.
Which should have been done because it was the most played tank. I think it was, right? Or was it Ryan because of NA?
I can't.
I'm not sure.
Tell you. Couldn't tell you.
I don't know.
Comment.
But like, banning Sigma is cap. We can agree on that, right? Like, he barely snuck in probably with play rate, and then
Hey,
It's an outside.
It was very important to a couple teams, namely Houston and Atlanta.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Agreed. I just don't.
But
you would need a lot else to go right to see Sigma actually get played.
For sure.
And he would obviously not have to be banned, but yeah.
Yeah, Diva had highest usage rate. Wait, we actually got it here. Here we go.
Houston will literally just play it. They don't need any extra incentive. They're just like, oh, we can play it. We're going to play it. That's it. What are you talking about, Joe?
Yeah, so
I don't know. I think it's a bait, but
just to put the record straight, of course, Diva was played the most. Then Monkey, Reinhardt, and Ball sort of the same. 17% Sigma, 10% Zarya. So yeah, I guess the second
look at
lowest.
this NA staying over here trying to sneak in a Wrecking Ball slander.
Some NA teams will attempt Wrecking Ball, like Justice. Sorry, Joe. I actually think they might be okay on that. Who knows? And then some teams are just they're gonna go the Winston direction. I see it pivoting two ways: Winston, Wrecking Ball. Which one you want? Take your pick.
Sure.
I think there's a right direction for NA.
Hey, hang on. Well, maybe I don't know. I think it's too early to call because I'm the guy that publicly said that Ball is overrated. And the reason I say that is not because I don't think Ball's the best. Trust me, if we're gonna go if you want to go into the character creator, right, where you get to choose how your face looks and you want to max out your stats,
okay,
right, and you max out all the stats, you get another person who maxes out all the stats on Winston. I think the Ball comes out on top. If we're talking about fully maxed out characters, level 100, but that's not the world we live in. So I think if you are, in Dallas, example, if you have Fearless that's available on a Winston, would you rather be putting your scrim time into pivoting him to Ball, or would you rather turn this top tier, maybe number one Winston in the world, in the league, and make him just hard go Winston comps and make this work and use Fearless as your win condition?
I agree.
Can you make this work against Asian competition?
I think you can. Well,
I think you have to find. It's going to have to be a creative solution. I think again.
I think it's better than pivoting to Ball.
Yes,
like having an average. Maybe I'm assuming. Maybe I shouldn't assume he'll have an average ball, but I don't think his ball is going to be Fate, Gaga, Among anytime soon. I don't think really anyone's will be. So maybe that's a moot point to make. But however, what I'm trying to get to is if there's a limited, finite amount of time to practice something, would you rather try and put it into finding a win condition from Winston, which you know and you're good at, and you know you're good at it, or would you put into something that it's going to be a bit of a mystery for you and that it's going to get you potentially very little results? And Yiska, you said, is it going to be good enough to beat the APAC teams? Maybe nothing will be good enough. Maybe no decision Dallas make will be good enough to beat them. But what's going to give them the highest percentage chance of winning?
Yeah.
To me, it's Winston over Ball.
Interesting.
Yep. Agreed. I think one big thing to look at regarding Washington, if you go back and you watch this would have been their opener versus Paris, week 6. Paris 3-0's Washington Justice. I think that show, that following tactical crouch, I called them the worst team performing in the league at that point because Mag's ball and their coordination around that hero is poor. And for similar reasons to the Dallas Fuel, I think Mag does have a great Winston. There's no reason for a lot of these teams. I can't name you. Can anybody name me an NA team that wants to play Wrecking Ball?
London.
I can't.
I wouldn't tell you. Don't want to
because it doesn't matter if they want or not. Actually, it does matter. It matters in terms of getting Mayhem their sneaking into the playoffs, the play-ins. It matters if London beats certain teams to help Mayhem, but other than that, it doesn't matter. But to answer your question, Joe, London wants to play.
Is that true? I feel like Hardy would much rather play Winston than Ball, right?
Mulfig.
I don't know. I couldn't. I don't rate either.
Mulfig.
Okay. And then what do they play with that?
What do you mean?
What does Hardy play?
I think
that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. I'm gonna back down, and I'll take
now. I think you've opened up a can of worms. You opened up a can of worms because I think there is, and this is my hot take. I feel like is anybody open to any kind of Roadhog stocks? Any Roadhog stocks?
Harris wants to play Ball.
Harris wants to play Ball.
Don't talk about Roadhog, please. That's gesture bait. That's how Seoul completely booms the rest of their season.
Oh my god,
man! Hear me out. You've got Wrecking Ball running around. You've got a bunch of flankers running around. A lot of good hook targets. That's all I'm saying. There's no other flex tanks that give lethality and CC.
Did you find these counter picks from my personal ranked games or just my games where every single game has a hog and me as a tracer player somehow runs into a random hook that they're not even fucking going for me, but they just randomly hook me? Yes, I'm traumatized. Then correct Joe. But at the Overwatch League level, who the fuck? Maybe a ball gets hooked. I think the balls, even after being hooked, is hard to punish unless you're going to follow up with a hack or something like that. Dude, if you can hook and if you can consistently hook Overwatch League level tracers, bro, just like hog is the best hero in the game at that point. And I've heard this. People come into my chat and be like, "Oh, Roadhog just hook forehead." I'm like, bro, you can't.
Yeah,
if it was
that's
possible to simply just hook, every team would be playing Roadhog 100% of the time.
The thing is,
agreed.
The thing is, we're talking about this as if Gesture didn't sit in a like 4-star restaurant, just like
okay. To be fair, that boy was fucking tanks. Okay,
wipes off his face, just goes like, I guess it's time to flip the coin again. Heads, I make Roadhog meta again. Tails, I retire. It's time again, guys.
He hasn't retired yet, so I guess we know where those coins have landed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or it's just like an Inception moment where it's just perpetually flipping. It just never comes down. Like gravity doesn't exist in his like mental palace. It just flies into infinity. Nobody knows.
His mental Inception fortress of the coin is constantly flipping non-stop.
All I'm saying is I don't think there's a non-zero chance. I think the threat of the hook is enough to change how tracers play.
Team decides to play Reinhardt even when they shouldn't because of that reason.
Okay. Agreed. I think that's more of a chance. To be fair, I think there are some NA teams that are stubborn enough to
one team that's like, oh, we can just TP into them. Oh wait, we don't get a second TP.
Just like a brigade player sitting in voice comes going speed boost. Just like get the atmosphere going.
So London, maybe they want to play ball, but then I forget that I don't know what Hardy plays if they play ball.
Yeah.
So rip that option.
Does Chongsik have a ball? Anybody familiar with Chongsik's hero pool?
Also, who cares what Vancouver are going to run?
Yeah, agreed.
Doesn't matter. I don't even want to see them win again a game until we get to the Brit Bowl. It would ruin the Brit Bowl if either London or Vancouver win again. You'll both be winless by the time we get to the final match of the season, regular season. Okay, because the Bread Bowl is the most important storyline of this entire season and the second best game of the entire season after the grand finals.
Yep.
So
agreed. They should just save it. They should just put it on land.
Must be preserved. It's you. By the way, you also get double points for Bread Bowl, so make sure you pred accordingly for those tasty double points.
Could one of the shock tanks have a ball, just like developed in the pocket, away from everyone? Just like practicing it. Like I go down this list. Nobody has a ball in this freaking division.
That's why I'm saying I think a lot of NA teams will just play Winston. Like why
the successful ones will.
Why not everyone has to play ball and all the fans are like, oh bro, these teams are gonna fail because they can't play ball and they can't catch up on ball. Yeah, okay, no one can catch up on ball at this stage. Anyone trying to catch up on ball, you've missed the boat. You needed that like 2 stages ago. You've missed the boat. So I'm sorry, you can't catch.
So you just lose in playoffs? You just lose? I don't know if
I don't think you just lose.
You play to the best percentage chance of winning, which for certain teams like Dallas is Winston.
I think you can shift Sombra around to kind of. It's a lot of moving parts. I think there's probably going to need to be some more creative picks out of NA. Yes, I think the onus is on them to adapt when it gets to that point. If the meta is exactly what we think it is, which spoiler, it usually isn't. So we'll see. I don't think it's an auto loss.
I'm pretty confident I know what the meta is going to be.
I agree. I'm similar. I think it is one way, but I do not put it past teams, especially in practice, to run out on control, especially these NA teams, run out on control with Brawl. That clouds win percentages, that clouds what's being run, and then people try to counter that and they end up on some goofy double sniper shit. Like fuck, I know.
Need to we're going to look at here map pool real quick, and then we're going to get into the actual discussion about matchups, because I think we've been wanting to get into some proper discussion about matchups the entire time, because no matter what we talk about, we just end up talking about matchups again. So that's what we really want to do. So let's just go through this. Obviously, the big thing here to me is that there's no Gibraltar. So to be clear, it's the same 3 assault maps we've had all year. Temple, Hanamura, Volskaya. Same 5 control maps we had all year. Elias, Oasis, Busan, Nepal, Lijiang. And the only maps that change are in Escort and Hybrid. In Escort, we have Havana, Route 66, Rialto. Hybrid is Blizzard World, Numbani, Kings Row. Again, most notably missing is obviously Gibraltar, which means one of the best Winston maps is gone. And that to me would have been a potential swing map that could have been a really interesting one. There is a real world where you could actually see some Orisa defenses, or maybe some Orisa offenses with good payload tempo control on all 3 escorts. Because Havana, Route, Rialto, they're not awful maps for Orisa. Just saying. That's my take.
Havana gets real dicey now that you don't have Sigma, so you can't play like the intersection like Shock used to, where you'd have 2 pockets, one with Sigma, one with Orisa. You have maybe your snipers, you have a tracer running around. You can't do that anymore because Sigma's gone. So I think Havana gets a little dicey. Route's possible. I think Rialto's a really good one. You don't have to play any kind of weird pockets, so there I think you could get it. I'm honestly looking at Assault, if anything, to see the most Orisa play, a la again the Shanghai Dragons. I think they're summer qualifier. I mean, they used it on Temple and they used it on Hanamura. I think historically they've used it on Hanamura. I think they used it against Florida, but it was in a specific meta, so it's difficult to kind of say. But
can I actually say one thing about Hanamura? This is, as much as I joked about teams forcing a Ryan without Lucio, Hanamura to me is the classic map where you TP a Ryan onto the point or near the point, and you don't actually get Lucio at all. So as much as I joke about that, there is actually one opportunity for teams to still play Ryan comps, and that is going to be Hanamura.
Yeah.
My issue is A, it's really bad into B. And I think it's a gigantic bait if you try to like TP across the coast after capping A and you try to like push B. Like I think you just have to swap, which puts you at a tempo disadvantage. And then what do you run with it?
Well, that doesn't stop teams from getting a fast A though.
I agree.
I mean, sometimes B is just like cross that bridge when you get there, literally.
100%, and that's what I've heard en masse. But I think it is a non like. It's not something to just kind of gloss over when you just have to like you're playing for specific points. I think through and this could be just a tangent, but I think through the history of this game, we usually try to tend to make as little changes as possible. For whatever reason, it might not be tempo, it could just be comfortability and gear shifting. But I'm not a big fan of just like 1 point for 1 comp for 1 point and then swapping. In an ideal world, I'd love to see that, but I don't think we're there yet. But I agree that Hanamura is probably the best one.
I've actually seen plenty of teams do that in my time.
I've seen plenty of teams do that too, and I don't like it.
It's a good thing, but I'm just saying, like, I think it's a reasonable thing. I think ideally, in an ideal world, you have a scaling comp that goes from A to B cleanly, but sometimes, just you got to deal with one problem at a time. You go from A, you deal with that, you deal with B later.
100%.
I don't know if there's anything else crazy in this map pool. I'm trying to consider if Numbani is going to be anything. I don't think
Numbani's going to be a little weird. I think Numbani's going to be a little dicey.
I think there's some good sniping opportunities here. I think looking at Escort and Hybrid, there's some good sniping opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised if some teams wanted to go towards a Widow type of composition. However, it depends on the matchup. Because if you're playing Widow into like a Tracer Sombra dive with a ball, you ain't shooting anybody. That Zen and Brig will never show their faces, and you will have 0 people to shoot.
The only way that works is if you're like entirely reactive, which already puts you at a disadvantage. Like you have to literally hide the Widow off in a corner, wait for the dive to happen, and then show your face and try to shoot. Like
the other way is that doesn't have to be that way, Joe. The other way is let's say you're playing attack, you're pressuring objective, the other team must come to the objective, and now suddenly your Widow has a sight line. That's
fair, yeah.
But it sounds hard. It sounds tedious. It sounds maybe more. Widow sounds maybe more doable on escort maps in particular because you
Yes.
know someone has to push that payload and you're gonna find an angle. Yeah, that's about it to me. I don't see a huge Widow meta. Shock would love a Widow meta. I'm
Sure.
sure
Yeah.
Hans is dying to play that, but I'm not seeing a massive Widow meta ahead of us. Not with Sombra Tracer Ball being the predominant archetype.
Right.
It feels to me that a lot of this is going to get predicated on what supports are being run. Because
Briggs in.
if Briggs Zen is played, I see Widow jumping in value. I think the burst potential that Widow is going to give you is going to set you ahead a lot. And I think that makes up for her disadvantages. However, I think even if you just shoot Monkey, like the fact that you're getting like a health pool advantage just off the rip of just plinking kids, maybe even shooting a Zen, getting the pick potential there, and on top of the health pool advantage, I think does a lot for you. The issue is if you just change the Zen. If you just go Ana, it's like, okay, well, this feels a lot worse. You don't get a lot of the advantage of like just headshotting a tank, tank busting. It feels worse.
I'm gonna bring Yiska in, but I will say to answer your question. Well, I don't know if it was a question, but just my statement on support backlines, it'll either be Brig Ana or Brig Zen, and I don't see Mercy being played unless some team really wants to cheese a fire in there or do some other cheese like Pocket or Widow, which sounds low value to me. I don't see Mercy being played, so therefore it will be Brig Zen, Brig Ana, Yiska, Matt Pool.
Yeah. I don't know, like the changes don't seem too impactful. I also like the theoretical points about like maybe Numbani snap. I'm not sure. Like, yeah, they can have one-off like strategies around those specific points, but it's not going to really majorly determine how you play the rest of the matchup or really realistically how relative to everything else a match will go, right? Like it's a one-off strategy. Yes, if you think like a match would go down to the wire, that's probably something that you consider there. It's not even all points, you know? So I don't know, like I don't have a particular inkling if that will really determine outcome of matches as much as for sure for Winston, but everything else it feels fairly neutral. Like there's no real bend. What even dropped out in Escort?
Root's gone.
No, Root's in.
Roots is, I think, Dorado.
Sorry, I meant Junkertown and Gibraltar are gone. My mind was
Junkertown
elsewhere.
Yeah. I don't know. Like that. There's no particular. I guess. Yeah. I mean, we already know Brawl's not getting played, so whatever, right? Like,
shouldn't. We'll see.
Also, no Hollywood. That's the best sniping map. You lose that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, but even then, we didn't see much, right? Like, what's the percentage of like either Ash or Widow being played? Not that much. Like Ash, of course, had to have a ticket in at least, but like, I'm not sure what the percentage was.
I remember my pit scan. I remember some Ash being played. Ash actually got a decent amount of playtime on Hollywood. I can't remember which stage it was though, because I remember Fitz playing a lot of it. I remember Shy playing a lot of it. Yeah. I don't know. Widow doesn't sound like she's in a great place. Doesn't she have like an infinite? I don't think Widow got impacted by the hit scan nerf either, because if you scope on a Widow, like I'm pretty sure you just get. I don't know. I'm not a Widow player. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass here, but I'm pretty sure she's pretty much got infinite range anyway. It's effectively infinite range.
Yeah.
So really, it's the other hit scans. They got owned.
Maybe on second thought, like even using my same argument, maybe Hanzo's the pick instead. Especially in NA versus Winston.
Yeah, versus Ball, Hanzo's gonna suck.
Agreed. Yeah, you can't play it in Asia. Like, specifically to beat another Western team, I think Hanzo might be okay. Specifically on the escorts, maybe Assault could be alright.
That could be a thing that Houston is using, right? That makes a lot of sense to me.
I think Houston's gonna be a bizarre team. They're gonna need something in the bag.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Happy on Hanzo, yeah.
Let's get into the actual matchups now because we're talking about Houston. Also, real quick, we do have Widowmaker stuff on screen. So damage fall off range increased from 60 to 85, from 60 to 85 to 70 to 100. I'll just say that like 70, even 70 meters, 100 meters is a long. That might as well be the whole map. There are very few sight lines that exist. I don't think there are maybe even any sight lines that exist that exceed that anyway. So to me, Widowmaker effectively has infinite range because her fall off is such long range. There's almost no sight lines where that's going to be relevant. So Widowmaker is probably fine in my honest opinion. But matchups here, guys, do you guys want to maybe pick a couple of matches each?
Sure.
That you perceive to be either really interesting to you or really important to you in this upcoming. I mean, we can say upcoming week. I'll be open. We can just pick really any. I mean, preferentially it's this upcoming week, but any match. I'll start by saying, okay, the obvious one. There's Bread Bowl at the end of the regular season. Yeah, we all know it. We're all ready for it. Bread Bowl is the game of the year outside the grand final. So, that's the free bit in the middle of the bingo card. Let me just get rid of it straight away. Everyone's hyped for it, and it's going to be really funny and entertaining and hopefully good. But beyond that, where do you guys lean? Like, what are the matches you guys are keen for? Yiska, you were already.
Yeah, do you have one, Yiska?
I mean, now that you said that you think Paris will beat Dallas, I'm looking forward to that being proven wrong.
You stole my one. That's my one. No, okay, yeah, go for it.
Realistically speaking, I think Boston against Paris could be a good match. Just like, I think they're pretty evenly matched, even though you guys think like Paris Eternal's the best team in the Overwatch League at the moment.
Wow.
I think.
Now you put words in my mouth.
Realistically speaking, like I think we have 3 to 4 other banger matches this weekend, right? Like,
I think
all
NA's packed them.
Like the Atlanta, like Gladiators, Justice, like there's. I mean, it's probably easier to say what isn't a banger, and that's Dallas against Eternal. That's it. Like
no, the ones that are not a banger is all the Valiant games.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. For non-NA. Yeah.
And probably the Shanghai games because actually I enjoy watching Shanghai roll, but I know those can be boring for certain people because they're rolls. Let's be fair.
Yeah, and then maybe Shock against Boston won't be super exciting either, but not sure yet how that works out.
Who knows?
Oh my God!
I don't know.
He already
want to dive into it?
I'm not saying they're going to lose, but again, from somebody who's, will consistently remind the community, oh yes, the Shock era is over, guys. Like, is this the team that you're willing to say 3-0's the Boston Uprising consistently?
No.
I think they win.
Yeah, I think they will.
But like, I don't know if it's going to be decisive. I don't know what they're going to run. I don't know even who's playing. Is Violet playing DPS again? Who knows? Like, I don't think it's just a write-off game.
I think we can all agree Violet will play Zen. This is his
Hopefully.
Zen.
Hopefully.
Well,
right?
How can we talk about like how is the San Francisco Shock in 2021 still considered one of the top teams in NA?
Yep.
Is one of the only teams in the world with 2 main tanks and does not have a ball.
They might have one. I don't know. I don't know what their full hero pools look like.
Yeah, I could see Smurf maybe breaking out and probably being the leading ball player in NA. It's possible. That's the only team that I feel like on paper is like jumping out. Maybe Houston has one that they're hiding. I don't know if Jungu has.
Apparently Jungu is a ball player.
Maybe. I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to comment on it. I'd love it for Houston to break that out. I think that's going to, if that is the case, I think that's going to be a great boon for them because they're going to need to make up for whatever the hell Happy's supposed to do.
Everyone's like, oh man, yeah, Jungu played a lot of ball in contenders. I'm like, motherfucker, I casted that guy and this is a contender season. And I barely remember what he played. I barely remember him standing out at all.
Yeah.
And it's just like I was there for all of his games.
Right.
And I just didn't think he really stood out to me. So either my memory is really bad. It probably is. Look, I'm getting kind of old. Let's be real. Or I don't know. I don't see the ball. I don't remember the ball that well. Maybe I should go back and check my own VODs to see what the hell he did. But I don't really remember that ball. And apparently everyone else does, though. I don't know.
Yeah, I think after a certain age, you should check your balls. I'm sorry. You set this up so well.
You really had to do this to Dante? Wasn't he the one with the torsion? Shame on you.
Yeah.
Shame on you. No, Houston in general, they're a conundrum of a team. You ideally want two Dantes here. You want two Dantes in this meta. You want Dante on Sombra. You want Dante on Tracer.
Yep.
Sadly, you cannot clone.
You should subscribe Lee as well, but that's fine. But
Sure, agree. Yeah, there's plenty of other people that are like that, but specifically for Houston, they have an ideal DPS player in mind. And Happy is not.
I want to dive into a matchup. What matchup should we dive into? Atlanta Houston? Is that one we're going to dive into?
No, leading from that discussion, I was going to highlight Houston Washington.
Okay, let's dive into that one. Let's dive into that one. So, what do you? Who's heavily on board for Houston? Anyone?
Not me.
No. Okay, so you're heavily on board for Justice.
Yes.
Give me the Justice side of this one in the Houston versus Justice. Then
Justice have a lot going for them. They can return Mag to Winston, right? They can return Decay to Tracer.
Return to Monkey.
Ideally, yes. Return to Monkey. Just die forehead type shit, right? I think the ball's a bait. We've seen Mag on ball. We've seen this team try to play her on ball. Literally, from the meta discussion we just had, if you plug those heroes into what Washington wants to run, they have a lot of stars. I think Baybase is a big sleeper pick for somebody who's actually just a rock at flex support. Not in the sense that he's going to weigh you down, but somebody who you can just consistently count on. He's going to do his job. It's going to be fantastic. Decay on Tracer, I don't think I need to say much more else than that. I think Mag on Winston, arguably, slightly below Fearless in terms of consistency, but again, a star player. And then you have Assassin on Sombra, right? Like, was just coming off of leading the IBM Watson power ranking as much as I think that's cooked. I think it'd be hard to say that he isn't performing well on Sombra at this point, especially with their Game 5 set. Obviously lost against the Dallas Fuel to make it to the Summer Showdown, but I think they performed very, very well. And that is not exactly. I think that's very close to the meta and the style of play that we're going to be seeing coming into this. So I think they already kind of have a head start on top of Houston having a lot of deficiencies when it comes to DPS picks, when it comes to support picks. I'm a little scared if I'm Houston right now.
Can I throw one thing in there as well? This is something that people haven't thought about, and I might be one of the first people to actually throw this one in there. Okay. But I think Tuba plays over Closer. No shit. Tuba plays over Closer.
Yeah. As much as they're throwing it in there, there's got to be something. I've always been.
Apparently, he's a Brig player. Apparently,
right. And I thought that was just like a trial thing. I thought that was experimental. He must have good calling, because that's the one thing that people always will jump down my throat about when I criticize Closer, is that he's apparently the caller, or it has been for other teams. So you kind of transition that over. And that kind of is concerning when you're moving that out. But if Tuba can bring those intangibles, then yeah, go for it. They seem to be very comfortable with it. So why not? I'm not mad at it.
I like I like the dive core in this team. I think this is a team that is very well prepped in dive. I mean, they spent their entire preseason in Korea. Let's just start with that, where they played only dive before they even came into the NA meta. They're very prepped for dive. Mag, like I said, very well known at Winston. Now, this is one guy that I remember very clearly in his time at Contenders. I casted all his games for a couple of years in a row. And his Winston was monstrous. So that is, to me, his best hero. I don't think I really saw him on ball. I don't really remember his ball at all if he did play. I don't think I saw it at all. I remember the ball meta started coming on through, and I can't remember what Mag did. I think he might have even gotten benched at one stage, but I think that might have been the hog meta, and I might be confusing the two now. Basically, the end of the day, Mag, Winston, Prime, good Assassin, Sombra, Prime, Decay, Tracer. Is Decay Tracer, is it quite good now? I need to catch up on some Washington, but wasn't Decay maybe a little bit more average to start with? Is he much better now? Is he back to his old form?
I think a lot of that deficiency, if you go back and look statistically at May when they were playing Tracer, and they were performing extremely well, he was he was up there in terms of statistics. I think a lot of my bias comes from historical precedent. When we look at Decay's Tracer, it's just fantastic.
Oh,
It is a world beating.
How
I
good
think
Decay Summer Showdown Tracer.
it wasn't great, but I think that was just because Washington Justice weren't very good. I think that they were at a loss, getting a little bit late to the global meta, being a little bit more dive centric than the brawl NA. That was where the coordination really started to kind of seem a little wonky. And you look at May, similar thing when they play, I feel like it's specifically Mag, when you put him on things that don't go in the most like dumb, simple sense, the team just kind of falls apart. They feel like they want to play like super high tempo. They want to be kind of a la the Dallas Fuel. They want to be like the team that just is insistently engaging. Like they want to be the team that goes. They want to greenlight everything. So this should be their meta in that way. And I think Decay plugs in extremely well. I think this is the time where you see Decay return to like the gladiators memes of old, where he was getting paid quite a lot, that kind of thing.
I mean, you have Fury Diva, which is always a treat. Yiska, this matchup. Are you batting for Justice or Houston here? First of all,
Betting. Oh, this is
batting or betting. I don't know. I'm not gonna
either or.
Figuratively, guys, we're not actually putting down either. I'm not putting down physical money, but
yeah, no.
But what team are you going for?
This is probably this is so hard, isn't it? Like
it's a good one.
That's why this is the highlighted match.
So
one of them.
There's so much that like will Jake play? Will Dante then play Tracer? And will they try to put Happy on Hanzo?
Sombra?
Happy Sombra, I think.
Maybe.
I think it has to be Happy Sombra. Happy McCree.
Yeah, maybe.
See, you're already starting to get a little.
Yeah, I'm not feeling great about this. Yeah. Then again, like Justice is late to metas, right? Like they're week 1. If they play week 1, it's not as amazing.
But it should be so cut and dry.
This should be an easy meta to predict. I would be horrified if teams were late to this meta. Like, what is it to be late for?
If I come out Friday and I see Zarya Orisa, I'm throwing at my eye. What is life at this point? I don't know what we've come to.
Yeah, I don't know. So apparently public odds are 42-58. I don't hate that. I think Justice are slightly favored.
Which way?
Are those the Monte Carlo odds?
The odds from Odds Portal, I think.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, 40. You said 42-58. Which way?
Justice.
58 for Justice.
Oh, that feels a little close for my liking, but we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it is early, right? Week 1, we see a lot of shakeups.
You're still kind of torn, yeah.
If I'm still torn on this, like on I don't. If Jake plays, I'm coin flipping this. If not, then it's probably 60% Justice. Yeah.
So it's a 50-50 if Jake plays, otherwise it's Justice.
Yeah.
When I look at this on an individual level, I'm liking it more from Justice. I'm just a little bit, maybe scarred from. Okay, yeah, they went 4-0 melee, but then that ended fast when we got to knockouts. Summer Showdown, reasonable. Look, I'll be honest, I didn't watch all of the games. They've had a really interesting season. I think this is their best chance to bounce back because they're about to get 2 metas in a row. Counter playoffs, open meta, which should both be good for them if they want a hard focus on dive. And I think their team from day one, from preseasons, has been built to play dive well based on who's on this team. So I have to assume, look, if there's any chance for Justice to do well, it'll be now. And for what it's worth, if we rewind back on this episode, you'll remember that my top 3 teams in NA, speculatively, were Dallas, Paris, and Justice. Well, if we wanted to put an order, it'd be Dallas, Justice, Paris in that order, right? Based on points. And a lot of that comes down to, I think, Justice's strength of the schedule is pretty damn good. Houston's obviously the very contentious match. So was Gladiators actually, and maybe we should get into a little bit of conversation on that. But they got Toronto, Vancouver. So I think at minimum they go 2-2, because even I think an average Justice probably should beat Toronto and definitely will beat Vancouver.
Yeah.
So minimum 2-2 here, but I think they beat Houston, and then Glad's Washington is a toss up for me. And in fact, on Playchat I gave Glad's that one. So I have Washington going 3-1.
3-1.
Yeah,
I think that's likely.
Because I want to get into some discussion about Gladiators, why don't we head into Atlanta Gladiators? Because the other match I wanted to talk about is actually Atlanta Houston, but we've already talked about Houston. So let's talk about two other teams who are playing against each other. Atlanta Gladiators. Now, let's begin with Gladiators. From my POV, I have a lot of concerns about Gladiators walking into this meta, because they've been one of the hardest teams in terms of going towards brawl styles or even double shield styles. They love that double shield, love that brawl, get a lot of that May in there. They want to put Kai into a McCree. The Iris is almost only played BAP. I don't even know what else Iris has played this season. I'm pretty sure he's got 90% plus play rate on BAP in terms of his picks personally.
I wouldn't be shocked, yeah.
Masters played mainly pretty much only Lucio. So I'm not saying they can't play other things, but like in terms of what I'm seeing, I just haven't seen this team on anything else. And beyond that as well, like, does Gator have a ball? Does he have a Winston? To me, he's like a Ryan Orisa player, Orisa mainly. And I just haven't seen enough of those two other picks. Edison is apparently their dedicated Tracer player. Is that going to be enough? Is maybe Pelican? Should Pelican be the Tracer player? Is Edison going to be the Sombra player? Who knows? Are they going to try and force Kai into this meta on a hit scan? Like, Atlanta Reign just seem like, as a team on paper, they're not cut out for this meta. The pieces to me don't really fit together well, and you have to shove these pieces together on the jigsaw puzzle and just slam it in there with your fist to try and make this team work.
Yep. I think they are the most likely team to be running something brawl like, whether that be like a Lucio-less Rhine or some sort of like a Orisa defense. And I don't hate it just for them. I think in a vacuum, if we're looking at the season as a whole and we're looking at, the identities, the styles, playing to your comfort, trying to find things that work for your players, there's arguments to be made that perhaps you can kind of will it against some of these mid-table teams. And if I'm going to be completely honest, I haven't been a big fan of Bird Ring Sombra this season. That said, I don't think one, minor, mark against the Gladiators should really put them at any kind of disadvantage. I think this is not Atlanta's meta. I think that was literally just the summer showdown. That was their perfect run. If they were ever going to do it, it was going to be then. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. Obviously, made it to Hawaii, which is fantastic for them. But that matchup's, it could be a bloodbath, if I'm going to be completely honest. Like, I think Glad's just might roll over. Yeah.
This one.
Yeah, I think I have it going 3-1 Glads, and Atlanta maybe winning and doing some like crazy slow stuff on control and maybe seeing it work, or maybe like sneaking out a Hanamura, like you said, TP victory. But I don't know. It just feels.
To be clear.
Say that again.
That's only effective on A, to be clear. There's
I agree.
There's no TP cheese on B, unless we're talking about like TPing to the point, which is useless, or trying to TP to a high ground, which the other team disengages. So even then, I don't see them winning Hanamura with that strat.
I'm reaching for things where they could maybe like defend A, and then like Atlanta gets defense early, they full hold, and then they just TP and cap it. Something to that.
Also, they're playing Temple of Anubis anyway, so
fabulous.
So we don't even whatever moot point.
It gets even less. This feels convincing. Gladiators.
That's the fourth map, so they would have to have already won a map to even get
right. There. Yeah, this is a 3-0. This feels very clearly to be a 3-0.
Where do you land here? Thoughts on these two teams?
A 3-0, really, dude?
Yeah. Is it that hard to believe?
Yeah.
All right.
What does Atlanta play? What do you like? I like their DPS.
Your argument. I want to hear this.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that their tank lane is sort of shot up. Like they can't play the double.
Not even just the tanks.
Sorry.
Not even just the tanks.
What? What's the problem with the rest? I don't think
We
that
got a
DPS.
Bap Lucio backline. They've only played Bap Lucio.
Yeah.
You don't have an elite tier tracer on this team.
I mean, that's true.
Kipster
Yeah.
will you put any of Pelican, Edison, Kai in there, Kipster probably shits on all of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
And still, I feel like there's still such underlying quality in that team. I don't know. Like, I don't think it's as clear cut. Of course, like the odds are preposterous and not taking that pool into account. So
Yeah, that's
it was basically a coin flip. But I mean, I have gladiators, but like,
they have to come out with some smelly Gouda.
Matt, okay. Lijiang Tower, Blizzard World, Route 66. Start with those three because they have to win one of those to even get to map 4 and 5. So let's not even talk about the other two maps yet. Lijiang, Blizzard World, Route 66. Which one do they win? If it's not a 3-0. Lijiang, Atlanta win.
I mean, there's some bullshit they can pull, right? Like you can pull. I mean, even the Farah you can pull.
Stop it. No, this is not the team playing Farah. This is the team playing McCree. If there's a McCree team, this is the McCree team.
I think Atlanta are the last team in perhaps the entire Overwatch League to play Farah.
Yes.
Like out of 20 teams, they're the 20th team to play Farah.
Pelican doesn't have a Farah?
Paris.
It's not because they're not good on Farah. It's because they hate that shit. They hate it.
I'm not sure.
I don't think Farah saves anybody. I don't think any team gets saved by Farah, let alone these two. No team plays Farah seriously anyway.
If you want some Atlanta hopium, whatever the fuck the Zoomers are saying, you have to run some slow shit. You have to run like a Bap, Brig, Rhine, McCree. Like you have to just give fucking. It genuinely might be Bap, Brig, McCree, Sombra, Rhine, Diva. Like give Edison the wheels.
Let's say that works in Control Center. I'll give you Control Center.
Yeah.
Done. All right. They pull out that, whatever that monstrosity is, it works in Control Center. How do you win one of Night Market or Gardens with that? You don't. I don't think you do.
It's hard. Night
Market is winnable.
Things.
With what? Ryan Cheeks with no Lucio? Okay, now you can talk about Fire if you want. Now I'm like, bro, if you want to run that on Night Market, I'm going Fire.
I mean, Glads is a team that does run it. Yeah,
they could run it. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Could there be some Torb shit?
Yes, actually,
yeah,
there can be Torb. Torb is, I think, the sleeper hero of this entire meta that has been brought up very few times. Torb is one of the best anti-counter dive heroes that is available. Torb McCree, no cap, is a very good DPS line if you just want to counter dive and you don't want to dive.
Yep. You put like Torb McCree. Oh, you have such
Torb McCree, Orisa Diva, Brig, not Brig Mercy.
Bap?
Yes, Brig Bap. I legitimately think Brig Bap. That backline, that's those 6 heroes.
I mean, you gotta
I can actually
kill him like 3 times.
Literally see huh?
Gotta kill them like 3 times through all the defensive cooldowns they have. Like
there's one
like nobody's diveable.
There is one problem. It is very slow to rotate. You need specific
100%.
maps for this to work on, for this to actually be effective on. And ideally you're on defense as well. So on Blizzard World Route, you're ideally on defense. Now that is a hard comp to dive into, and one of the most perfect anti-dive comps you can run with this hero pool. So
if Atlanta walks out with that
right now, and be like, here's the comp you guys need to play.
Yes. Genuinely. Like if you like Houston, Atlanta, is there any other teams I feel like that literally just can't play this?
I don't even know if they can't. I just don't know if they can. Because I haven't seen it.
Agreed. I think to
Game
their
two.
strengths, when they've been successful, they want to play slow. You have comfort picks in there. You want to like engage. You want to catalyze Kai, put him in this lineup. He has star potential. Let him take over the game. Edison feels like an everyman can do it all. That's great. I'm sure he's a lock. It sucks that you can't play Pelican. Maybe even Pelican plays the bat. Like it doesn't. Who cares at this point? Like I don't think that them trying to conform is going to be the play. I think Atlanta, yeah, and Houston in a weird way fills a similar position where it's like you have a couple pieces that would work in the framework, but the rest of it just feels so misconjoined. Do your own thing.
So,
Yo,
like,
I just convinced myself so many teams will run top this event. Like it just smells so
Yeah.
NA, doesn't it?
Yes.
it does.
Oh,
It is very like.
It smells
Oh,
Atlanta, if anything.
Yeah.
I think Atlanta are the first team to run the Torb.
Yes. Yes.
So where are you now? I don't know. Are you?
I'm saying
you looking at
3-1.
3-1?
Yeah. 3-1.
3-1 in which way?
Gladiators.
I assume Glad.
Glads? Okay.
And you'll say that maybe Lee Jung is the one
Yeah.
for Atlanta.
Just like you win the first fight, you entrench on points, then it's really hard to
Oh,
get
you're right.
on. It's especially on night market and stuff. Like
I think Atlanta win Blizzard World. I think their best shot is the full hold Blizzard World and just get it
Ooh.
done. Done on attack.
Agreed.
I don't-
Agreed.
That's where they get some at.
If Atlanta comes out with this Torb shit, and I literally think that's the only thing they can run. Like that is not the only thing they can run. Obviously, they have other heroes that they can pick, right? But it is the highest like win percentage. I don't even know.
I don't hate this comp, man. I think this is
I don't hate it.
a
I
good
really don't. I'm genuinely considering changing it.
so many of their strength.
So we
No,
went
you-
from dude.
I went from 3-0 to I don't know if Glads can win.
Because
Christ.
Torbjörn, dude.
Yeah, wait, quick, Yiska. Joe, don't listen. Yiska. I've just baited Joe in so hard. He doesn't even know. All right, Joe, you can listen now.
Okay, thanks. No.
Yeah.
This goes back to a lot of issues I have with Glads and like their win conditions. Like they don't, to me, and this goes back literally to like their debut. So it's not necessarily super fair, but it feels like it's a thread throughout most of their games. They do want to make these big swaps that I agree with a lot of the time. The problem is that they never kind of play them right. It feels like they always like they're either playing too fast or somebody's like, it feels like it's mostly Muse and maybe like a DPS pick every once in a while that's like playing way too ahead of their team or way too behind their team. They never feel like a team that like really gets the proper like gear shift in, if you understand the analogy. And I think if Atlanta just like hard blinders Torb, Glads is gonna have to counter, which they probably were already trying to do inadvertently, just trying to like throw different looks at people. And I think that I have to still give this Glads, but I think it actually might be a whole lot closer. On the like, the only way that this is close is if they play Torb.
Joe, you can't not give it to Glads because if you give it to Atlanta, we have to make the assumption that Atlanta you win with Torb 3 maps out of 5.
Right, exactly.
That's too far of a bridge to cross. I can't do it. And I'm the guy. I'm the guy that's throwing this comp out there. I'm the guy that's DMing onto like, what do you think about this comp? I'll tell you his response later privately. Now that we move on from this, I want to. Okay. Did anyone else have a match? Otherwise, I was going to throw a Philly one in there because I am curious about Philly in this minute. Did anyone else have anything?
Epic tragedy of Philly.
Dude, Philly is like
Philly Soul. Let's throw that one up. Philly Soul. Oh, wait,
sure, yeah, Philly Soul.
That's in a different week. Should we do it anyway? Maybe we should do Philly Hangzhou. Maybe Philly Hangzhou this week because it comes up this week.
Yeah,
that's not a bad one either.
Yeah, do a Philly Hangzhou. Do Philly Hangzhou then. We'll do that.
Dude, isn't Philly like the? Philly is like now that everyone's there, I almost don't want to look. You know, I almost don't want to see because like whatever happens, it is still this. They kind of couldn't like keep in their groove, and it's such like you know, it just got all fucked by visas, and like this team should be good, but there's so many what ifs, and like it's just sad to see them at if they don't play like well this week, right? It's like the it's like
even if they do play well, it's just in the shadow of the entire season just being kind of a cluster. Like, yeah, May was okay, but it literally is just, man, why couldn't we have seen this all season long? That, like, we were robbed of that thanks to nobody.
Of who? Wait, what?
Of Philly being good, right? Like, if they play poorly, it's, oh my god, they were tainted by visas. If they play well, oh my god, they were tainted by visas. Like, why couldn't we have seen this all? Like, we were robbed thanks to nobody's fault that we were kind of robbed of that. But if they come out and they look gangbusters, like, it sucks either way.
dude,
If they look bad, it sucks. If they win, they suck.
dude,
Philly have done the opposite of Paris. Paris have only gotten better. Philly have only gotten worse.
like
They're actually going in different trajectories.
it's like, so now Philly plays this stage. Even if they suck, they probably will qualify for season play-ins. Then they maybe go to playoffs. It's like Shockwave touched ground in Korea. Someone told him Korea is lava, and now he's on the jump to NA again to play playoffs. Like, why did you even fly him out? Like, it feels so bad because AVRL, before your time, we had him on this podcast, and we were like, oh yeah, like you made a great choice going with Philly Fusion, and then these guys had to go to Korea, and like this kid just got so fucked. Then like Astro gets his shit banned instantly. Like, this is just it's stupid as hell, right? Like, Hotbar is not even the problem. Like, I don't know if anything really changed about this team that shouldn't have changed last stage, you know?
I mean, Shockwave being in studio, live audience type deal, like that should be big. And I don't know if that's just me hoping that it's going to be big for this team because they deserve it. But
they might not be in Texas. You have to be the 3rd seed from APAC to be there.
Yeah.
I 100%. What I'm saying is that Shockwave is a big enough factor just being able to play in Korea is enough of a maybe they have a chance. Because what's the big criticism that we gave them during the summer showdown? Like, you don't have a Tracer, you don't have a Sombra. Like, everybody's just getting pooped on. Everybody's just getting picked early. You're playing weird comps. Okay, we reset. Now we have an idea. It's very clear, at least to us, what's being played, especially in Asia. You're more Western leaning in compositions as is, just because of the personnel. Now you have Shockwave. You have a clear picture of what you want to run. You have a clear picture of what you want to practice, and you have a new DPS to put on top of that, right? Like, there's realms where Philly can finally get their feet under them and say, okay, cool, we can be competitive. I don't know how successful it's going to be.
The thing is, like, ideally you would have. Do you even want Shockwave on Tracer and Sombra, or would you have wanted him on like Echo? Even though Rascal, of course, but Rascal wasn't that great this
that
season.
Becomes pointless now. It's just like if for Countdown Cup, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
there's no Echo. He must play what's available. And he wasn't going to be the Ash player on this team. That was always going to be Carpe anyway. So
if he can't play either or,
they'll try it internally. They will try it internally, and 9K will play all 4 of his DPS on Tracer and pick the best one.
I feel like
the best one still might not be good enough, but that's what they have to do.
I feel like this team will just roll out with Toby Alarm, Mano,
correct,
Hotbar.
Yep.
Carpe. And I'm not sure if Shockwave then plays. Maybe.
Can I be real?
Yeah.
I don't think Carpe plays. I think it's going to be EQ with Shockwave.
Yep.
I think it's Shockwave, Tracer, EQ, or Sombra.
Yep.
Legit. That's my
He's
pick.
already spent time practicing it. You might as well just keep him on it.
The only way that doesn't happen is if maybe EQ isn't your Sombra choice and Shockwave is your Sombra choice. And then maybe Carpe has been hard practicing his Tracer to be good at it again. But Philly, to me, are pretty screwed here. Not just in this matchup, but in all matches. I remember I joked that Philly could go 0-4. They play Shanghai, they play Hangzhou, and then they go New York and then Seoul. Like, they play... New York is on paper the easiest team there. But even then, Again, they just lost to New York all season long, and New York are improving as a team. Philly are not. And beyond that as well, it's like, let's say they do beat New York. That's only a 1-3 record. Because I see Profits as a duo on Seoul diffing Philly pretty hard.
Oh yeah.
Even though the rest of Philly should be better than the rest of Seoul, I don't know if that's going to be enough. Shanghai, not even worth talking about, 3-0.
Yeah.
This is the match that's worth talking about. And in this particular matchup, let's talk about Hangzhou a little bit because we've been heavily on the Philly side of discussion. Hangzhou, okay. Be fair, Shy will lose his Echo and Ash, two of his best heroes. Ash has been his number one hero the whole season. Still has Tracer. Pretty reasonable on the Tracer. Probably won't play it. Architect is going to be the Tracer player. Does he play McCree? Will they force McCree Tracer? Other than that, he will play Tracer, and Somansu will come and play the Sombra. That's the other option for the team. That's something they've also run. And I think that actually, if they want a hard Tracer Sombra, they will put Somansu Sombra, Shai's Tracer, and they will hard force that. I suspect Gushui will play more Winston than Ball. Or should I say, I hope Gushui plays more Winston than Ball. But I also think that Hangzhou as a team will be baited into playing Ball because they will look at Chengdu and they will look at Shanghai with envious eyes and think, oh, that's the comp we got to play. And they're going to take their best, the best Winston player in the entire Eastern region and potentially the second best Winston player in the world in the league and put him on a fucking Ball.
Yep. Yep, I wouldn't be shocked. Wouldn't be surprised.
Man. Like this match is just like it should be so much better than it will be, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. On paper it should be sick as fuck, but in reality it's going to be can Philly figure out what to do versus what actually is Spark going to do?
Dude. I feel like Spark is pretty cut and dry. I think I know what Spark's going to do. I mean, IDK will play the Brig that he's been playing. MC will play the Zen that he's always been playing. And their team is the only variation is whether Shy wants to play McCree or Tracer. That's literally it.
You want Zen Brig? Oh, well, yeah, if you're playing Ball.
Yes, you do. You want Zen Brig.
Zen Brig?
MC Nizana has been pretty good. Gushui Winston as well. I, unless Philly have really sorted this shit out, this is looking like a 3-0 to me in favor of Spark.
Oh, you're swaying me. Is there any? Okay, let me. Is there a Torb chance for Philly? Do we give them the Atlanta treatment? Can we plug Torb into this team?
The thing is, they don't have that Gator Orisa. They don't have. Dude, I love Alarm, but they don't have the Iris BAP. What else do they not have?
We don't care that much about
who's
that.
the McCree player? Carpe's a good enough McCree player. Give him that.
Yeah.
But Carpe should also be. Unfortunately, Carpe should also be the top player.
I'm not convinced.
Maybe Rascal's your top player. Who knows?
Maybe Rascal is your BAP player.
No. Zero chance. I'm sorry. Zero.
Yeah. I like it, but I don't.
Because Alarm also is your Brig player.
No, Toby's your Brig player. Stop encouraging Yiska. It's not happening. Toby is the Brig player. And Alarm will play the map. It will. There's a 0% chance that changes.
Yeah, I don't.
It's not 0%. It's like 15%.
But
it's 15%, Joe.
Right now to Philly. If you're doing that, Yiska, and you're cheating, then you've cheated.
No. I'm sorry. I haven't cheated. But I will be firing off DMs to find out because this is interesting.
Oh you'll want to know for sure. I don't hate it. It is a 15% chance. I don't hate it at all. I do. I think Alarm can do no wrong. You can put him literally in any position. I think he'll succeed. Yeah. I to kind of circle back to the Torb, I think that they might be the other team that like maybe it's best if you just kind of do your own thing. Maybe it's time to bring out the Torb and the McCree. It's not, but neither is the DPS for dive, so it's
but they will force the dive to happen. I think they're gonna try it. They'll put the Mono Winston into action.
Yeah.
They'll put their best player that they have on Tracer, and whoever else on Sombra. The reason why they'll try that because they already did that in Summer Showdown. Did it fail? Yes. Are they gonna do it again? Unfortunately, I think they will, because I think they know it's probably their best option. I think Torb Cheese is not is maybe a short-term survival strategy to get through the countdown cup, which might be effective, and we'll say, okay, we get the play-ins, get the playoffs, and suddenly, you know, Lucio Ryan are back into action. That's what Philly will actually want to play. Philly need, I don't know. Philly need to survive. Now I'm starting to convince myself maybe the Torb is the answer, but I just as much as I think that may be an option, I don't think Philly will take it. I don't think they bite into that hook.
This feels like a gigantic reach, but specifically versus the Spark, who have had coaching issues. If you throw something hyper stylistic at them, I do wonder if Spark will have like the wherewithal to be able to counter it. It feels completely player driven.
I'm sorry I have to tangent this, but like they start out with Pagion, right? Like that kid doesn't play shy. They mix around their coaching staff, go 4-0. They let go of that coaching staff. You're like, what the fuck is going on with that coaching staff? And then I refresh Twitter, and it's fucking only Wish, bro. Like this is the cherry on top on all of this. Like you literally could not write a more fucked up script for this coaching staff for this team. Like it's unreal.
To be fair to Only Wish, who I often bully, I'm guessing at this point he has intangibles. He probably deserved to be a coach years ago.
For sure.
He's probably not a bad coach. He probably does offer something to this team. It's not a slight to Only Wish. It's a slight to like the chaos that is like the brain of the
It's
like
just the message, right?
Spark.
Like if you go, who is the worst player in Overwatch League history? Only Wish is one of your choices somewhere in there, right? Like, just the messaging of whatever happens there is just marvelous. It's just like, that's the cherry on top of the shit cake that has been this season at the Spark, dude. Like, I don't know what's going on. And once again, this team is cracked on paper.
Dude.
Nothing what's happening there should be happening. Like,
sometimes average players make great coaches. I mean, there's a reason why they're just not good players, but maybe they got the mind to be a coach.
Koki.
100%. 100%.
So I don't mind that. Also, apparently, which is announced as an assistant coach, not the head coach, so they still don't actually have a head coach.
Fabulous.
I will also say that,
Arhan.
like, coaching staff aside, it shouldn't be that hard to figure out what they should play. The only thing then will be, can they figure out how to adapt? And I think that maybe is a big question.
Sure.
But I have more faith in Hangzhou at this stage than I do Philadelphia, primarily because at least Hangzhou know what they can play, and they know they can play that, whereas a Philly don't even know what comp they're doing yet.
Yeah, that's true.
Dude, I'm like,
that's what I'm saying. That's the narrative I'm saying.
I think they bid.
I agree.
I feel like 75% chance that Philly will run Torb. That shit is coming.
No
you know Carpe is on that shit.
Shot.
You already know.
I think they should.
Plays.
I don't think they will.
I think Carpe plays the Kree. I think he goes to Kree 100%.
I think you want him on Kree or Reaper or whatever the fuck you pair with the Torb.
I'm gonna throw in one last one, just for the fans. It'll be a fast one. We're only gonna do one or two takes each max on this. We'll do one more matchup. Is there any matchup that you guys are dying to talk about, preferably from this week, that we haven't covered yet?
Dallas?
Ideally, it contains a team or teams that we haven't covered. We covered pretty much all the teams. Maybe it is Dallas Paris. Should we just do Dallas Paris?
Or Shock Dallas, right?
Or Shock Dallas. Is that all right? Let's do Shock Dallas. Do Shock Dallas. That's actually a really important game. Let's do Shock Dallas.
Yeah.
Because the implications here are not only just for Dallas, but for Shock. Shock have Dallas, then Boston, and then they have Vancouver, Toronto. So, bro, if Shock beat Dallas, they could go 4-0.
If Shock beat Dallas, Dallas might not fucking make it deep in playoffs.
Yeah.
If we're talking Justice should be good, Dallas should be insane.
Should
like, yeah. You put Fearless on Winston.
They have a Sparkle's a pretty good tracer now. Doha, Sombra, Tech got that.
Doha has been. I mean, if we're gonna argue against it, Doha has recently not necessarily performed up to his historical
No.
precedent.
Yeah, I agree.
Could that
I
change?
will say his
Yes,
potential. I will say the potential is there because I've seen it. I know what he's
Yes.
capable of. So
100%.
you give him a bit of a
You have
slight
to.
leniency. And then what else do you got? You got the Hanben Diva, and you got some more
Check.
fielder Anna to pocket the Fearless Winston,
Check.
and then you got the Jexa plays Brig.
Check. Like this
So
is made for this team. If they lose to Paris, if they lose to San Francisco, like that we've got problems. We've got problems.
let's discover San Fran a little bit. Is there anything on the San Fran roster, or as a team, that has good arguments for? Okay, let's start with the tracer position. Is there a
Sure.
tracer on the team that challenges? Is Glista's tracer good enough? Yes, no.
No. No.
Iska's not sure.
No.
No. I like Smurf Winston. Unknown if he will do ball.
Agreed.
Unknown if they should do ball. FD God's out, so we can rule that one out pretty quickly.
Yep.
You got Violet and Twilight. Unless FD God has a brig in there that we just, and it's just like a
Yeah.
really great brig. What does Violet Twilight play? Because I think Violet would like to play the Zen, but also I think he's their brig.
Yeah, I think he's playing Brig.
Yeah, I think he's playing brig as well. That means Twilight's on Zen.
Yeah.
Well,
Which
know if
I don't hate.
I like that or not. I'm not too sure if I like that or not.
Yeah.
Actually, no. Twilight goes Anna to pocket Smurfs Winston. That's a possibility as well.
Sure.
But it does put
Love that.
Violet on brig. Choi Diva, yep, that's fine.
Check.
What do we got for DPSs? Who's their Sombra player? So if Glista plays Tracer, you got Tyro, Arns, Nero. Who is their Sombra? Is it Nero?
Arrow, probably.
It might be Arns. Arns did play Sombra last year
Yeah.
for Shock.
Yeah,
A small amount.
Yeah.
It's not
he did.
impossible.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, this again, like this is the team, and that's just in a vacuum who's playing what. Then you get into this team has looked lost since day one. They are uncoordinated to the max. Whether it's and I had this point like queued up in my brain and I completely whiffed it. Like I thought they looked okay when they could play Echo. Outside of that, it's been all over the place. People going in when they shouldn't. Like it. It's a shame. If they were gonna get it together, it needs to be now. But it feels like every month we're saying that about the Shock, and they just haven't. You're taking a team that doesn't even know who they want to play, and they're uncoordinated versus a team that literally has like the most cherry picked meta for them, and they have consistent results and experience. Like
I'm gonna get an answer from you. So I assume you're going Dallas then.
Yeah, it doesn't feel close.
So we have enough time to get Yiska's take on these two teams, and then that's it. So Yiska,
Yeah.
What's your rundown of these two teams?
Like, I think Dallas kind of knows what they're getting into in terms of meta-wise. I don't think they need to play the Torb shit. I think for Shock, you might. The thing is, Dallas has a freaking easy stage if you compare it, right? Like they got like, I think it's Paris. They got London in there. I think they got.
Yep, they do. They play
Atlanta, but in the current like, it's not last stage Atlanta. And what is the last one? And London, right? So
yeah.
I still think like Shock is the hardest team they have here. I don't think it's Eternal like you guys might. Yeah, this is hard, especially because it's week 1, and Dallas is not great in week 1s, theoretically speaking, right? That said, they probably know
because they have a bad read, or they're just the team that suffers for whatever other reason.
Yeah, they're probably slow to it, and also like they have 1 week less off than all the other teams most of the time, right? Because they flight out to Hawaii. Dude, I'm not hating Shock winning this actually, but it's just like such a convenient thing to also have this fallback mechanism. Like, part of me is still like, yeah, this is a shock, dude. You know, and
I know what you mean, but yeah.
and it's also
You-
like, then there's this like, you know, trying to that tiny voice then coming up with excuses. Why would you like motivate yourself to win stage finals? It's all about the three-peat. You will like pull a soul and just like pop off at the last minute hour. Kind of kept themselves in the race as well. I don't know. Like, this is, I think it will be a 5-mapper. I'm pretty sure of that.
Interesting.
So that means Shock would have to beat Dallas at least on 2 maps. Actually, I don't even know who you have winning this yet, so they have to win 2 or 3 maps. So it really comes down to, where is Shock better than Dallas then? Like, in what areas are they actually better than Dallas? Because you're saying Dallas are weak in week 1. I don't know if I'd buy that. I only buy that if they have a bad read on the meta, but I think this meta is so cut and dry. It's hard to get a bad read on this meta unless you are a mega cheese team.
Is it though?
I think
I'm not sure if it's that cut and dry though. Like,
why
not?
Because you can play Ball, you can play Winston, you can play Sombra Tracer, you can probably play Torb. Like, your backline is not at all fixed. You can play Ana, you can play Zen. Like, you can play Bap. I don't think it's that fixed. Archetypically, yes, you're not playing Rush, right? But
yeah. I don't think that the Torb teams are going to be all that like common. Sure,
No,
you may see them.
Build an entire team around the Torb. You can't just run Torb into a vacuum. You don't run Torb Sombra, for example. And by the way, you talk about like, the backline. Okay, the BAP is probably run with the Torb, if anything, or the BAP is there for some sort of Ryan cheese or some sort of Orisa cheese. I'm calling it cheese because there's no good comps that otherwise you'd run with Orisa and Ryan this meta.
Shit,
You run the Ana with the Winston and you run the Zen with the Bull. It's like certain heroes are attached to other certain heroes, so it's not like, there's multiple variations.
Sure.
It could be any of these. It's like, no, specifically you run this with this.
Yeah. That makes sense.
To me, that's why it's cut and dry. It is fairly cut and dry.
But even then, you have like 3 options, right?
Well, in my mind, it's 2 main options. You either run the Ball version or the Winston version, and that depends, and that will change whether you run Zen or Ana. And then the third option is if you want to try and be really out there and do some Torb thing, Orisa maybe.
And then
but I think 90% of teams don't go there.
I think that then you still theoretically have some variations based on map, where you can toss in the fact. Not that they.
Just talk about. Let's just address it in the vacuum for now, and because if you want to get specific in the maps, you got Ilios, Nambani, Rialto, Hanamura, Li Jiang. Ilios, Nambani, Rialto to start with. Ilios traditionally super favored for dive, mega favored for dive. Actually, not a bad Widow map actually, so maybe Arns does something there.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, if Dallas goes hard, the only player that Arns can shoot is Winston, is Fearless, and he's the most hard-pocketed player. Actually, he's not. Statistically, Super is, but Fearless is very hard-pocketed anyway. So you're not going to, even if you chunk him down, I think Fielder is just attached to his hip. So, I don't know. Nambani, I don't see any.
You know what I can see Shock doing?
What?
Especially on Ilios? I think they might roll out on legs.
Gross. Versus what?
I know.
Versus Tracer Sombra, what does legs do?
Yeah.
Nothing.
I think he's literally there to shoot Winston, but it does nothing.
Tracer? Did you know he's literally a worse Tracer?
You're preaching to the choir.
A Tracer also just shoots Winston, but better than a legs would.
Agreed. I can see them doing it. I don't think it's good.
Yeah, I know. I think I gotta go 3-2 Dallas.
3-2 Dallas. But you think Shock have a? But okay, because we are gonna have to finish soon. But you do think there is somewhere that Shock outperformed Dallas at least twice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna say like which maps is it, but like just generally speaking, like what are the areas, and maybe even a vacuum, that you think Shock outperformed Dallas in? That they must do that twice, by the way. So how do they outperform Dallas 2 times?
I don't think like dive particularly suits. I don't know, like a lot of these situations feel like pretty coin tossy. I don't think there's like outperforming generally, but I don't think there is too many non-coin flip situations in that particular matchup. And coin flips, by definition, half the time go to the other team.
Sure.
Like Ilios, probably not. Numbani, I could see with some like first point holds. Rialto is harder. Hanamura is pretty tossy. Li Zhang is pretty tossy. I don't know. Like, then again, Li Zhang can't go to shock, otherwise they would win the series. But
I just mean like a general idea of like in what areas. Like, is there a matchup? Is there a player diff somewhere? Because we don't have to get into specific maps if you really want to go there. But the reason I ask is I just personally think it's difficult because when I really compare the teams and who's going to be playing what.
Yeah.
I
mean, who diffs who on like in that particular match? I think Jaxay probably wants to be on Lucio more, and they have less opportunity to sort of switch off, even though like Jaxay is probably a little bit underrated off the Lucio. I don't think they diff that much in other matchups other than main tank.
Okay. I won't lie. It's. I think both teams. I don't know, man. I think Sparkle's going to be better than Glister. I think Doha's going to be the better Sombra. I don't even know if Shock will run a Sombra, but I think running anything that's not a Sombra feels worse.
I'm not sure. Like, Doha didn't convince me on Sombra whatsoever. And I will also say I'm not even convinced this will be a great matchup in terms of like them playing both well. That's once again like it almost like this is other than like for the Philly Spark series, it was not just meta induced also, but like team volatility induced. Here it's like because hero pools, this might suck.
It's possible. I mean, weirder stuff has happened, but it does feel one way. And
I will say that I don't think Dallas dominate. I think I have Dallas winning, but I don't think they dominate. I don't think even if it is, I'm not going to rule out the possibility of 3-0, but even if it's a 3-0, it could be a close 3-0 where Shock look decent. They might not win a map, but it could be decent. I don't think Shock suck as a team. I think this is a really good stage for them. I think they go 3-1 this stage probably, and the one they lose is probably versus Dallas.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really hate the Shock here. I just want to know how they want to manage their DPSs. I think the rest of the team is pretty cut and dry. I think I know exactly what their supports and tanks going to play. I just don't know what they're doing with their DPSs.
That is the question. It's a big question, though.
But cool. I mean, we have some really good matches to look forward to here, and we have this weekend of Overwatch League starting very, very soon. It'll be the last stage before playoffs. A lot of contention for play-ins. We spent a long time talking over playoffs seeding and play-ins, maybe less on the play-ins in terms of who's going to be what seed. The thing we didn't really dive into is like, okay, but who's 4, 5, 6? You know, we didn't really do that and do the orders of the teams. But there's a lot of contention in terms of who could be where. There's a lot of teams that are very close in scoreline. So every team outside of Dallas and Shanghai are actually fairly close in terms of where their points are. There's like maybe only 3 points separating some of them, less in some other cases. So things will get very competitive in the stage. And there's especially in NA, trying to lock in top 3 beyond Dallas feels very contentious. And for East, it's probably just a race between Chengdu and Seoul, which I favor Chengdu heavily in. But guys, that is gonna do it for this week. TCP episode 185. Thanks for tuning in. Much appreciated once again. 186, we come back next week and we will be discussing how week 1 of Count No Cup went. How does that affect the standings? Who's looking good moving into week 2 and who's looking good going to the actual tournament and all the rest. And we'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in.